Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by this supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. Hey guys, can you guys hear me? My internet just totally went out. Technical difficulties. Can you hear me now? Are we 5-5? Hey guys, can you guys hear me? I guess so, because I'm getting an echo over here. Technical gift. I mean, the whole thing just went dead. So, I love you too. Are you kidding me? So, I'm going to bring a couple people in here that are absolutely wonderful, and then I'm going to reload everything that it just disappeared on me. So, here we go. Let's bring in co-host for tonight, Mr. Donny Cho. How's it looking over there, honey? Everything's looking okay?
Yeah.
Okay, that was weird. Everything just went crazy.
I think Lynn is here to say hi as well. Hey, Lynn.
Hey, Lynn, welcome. So I wanted to say real quick, because I don't want to make him sit up and stay up any longer. So while I'm trying to grab everything, I just lost all the videos and slideshows and stuff. I have somebody here we all know and love, and we got to send him lots of healing and prayers. And here he is for proof of life, the old rattlesnake himself, Mr. Steve Stockton. Hello, love. Hello. Hey, Sandy's with him too.
To quote Mark Twain, the reports of my death are greatly exaggerated.
I love Mark Twain.
Sandy's got Abby with her too there.
Hello, Abby. Hello.
It's like we're backlit. Looks like we're in silhouette. We're mystery guests.
That's okay.
Those crime shows, we can't see our faces.
Say bye, everybody. Say it's dinner time for an Abby.
She's got to go feed the cats.
Enjoy, Abby. So, Steve, we just, like I said, we don't want to keep you, love. You stay as long as you want. I'm going to see if I can go retrieve some of these slideshows and stuff. Just don't mind me. Talk amongst yourselves. Everybody send all these
Donny Cho
papers.
Stepping in my stead, but I'm as I told you earlier, I hope I can say this, but I feel like hammered shit.
You can say hammered shit. Forgive me if these videos start to load.
Such a descriptive term. Do you ever think what hammered shit would look like? That just take it and just smack it.
Like, yeah.
Right.
Like, who would think to take a hammer to a pile of shit? I mean, that guy's got too much time on his hands.
A toddler.
Yeah.
I've never taken a hammer, but I put a firecracker in a pile one time and blew it all over my brother's car and got in trouble.
All right.
That reminds me of the time they tried to blow up that whale. Wasn't that in Oregon?
Yeah, that was, I think, I want to say it was. I can't remember. Lincoln Beach, I believe, or Lincoln City,
Yeah,
over on the coast there. Yeah, it didn't work out so well.
didn't work out so great.
Do you see all those
I'm
books, Steve?
not
Look
going
at
to
that.
stick around too long, but I wanted to put a little interesting anecdote in here. I
Please
heard
do.
something a couple of years ago about this guy that's writing a book about the Lincoln assassination, and he started receiving death threats. Now,
To
if
kill him.
you're getting too close to the truth on something that happened, what, almost 200 years ago?
Uh-huh.
Well over 100 years ago, anyway.
157, I believe.
There's, yeah, there's something to all that. I mean, who still cares at this point enough to threaten somebody that's about to uncover the truth? So that just tells you how deep the tentacles go on those. There you go, Lynn LeBlanc. I like that.
Yeah, there you
Uh,
go. Vixen Doe says, well tenderized. And Jamie says, hope she's feeling
much
better.
tenderized.
I'm just now
Thank you,
catching up,
Jamie,
guys.
sweetheart. I'm working on it. Uh, I'm out of the woods, but not completely yet. So
Yeah, we need them to stay on that and eat all the
Sandy
garlic
had
I
to
tell
go
them to
feed
eat.
the animals. So. Thanks.
All of
Mulder's
the
asleep under my chair here. He loves it out here in the desert.
That's great. That's great. A lot of love for you, sweetie. You know, you can stay as long as you want, but I'm going to tell you now, don't sleep laying down if you can help it. That's what seemed to, you know
I
what I mean?
appreciate all the prayers, well wishes, and good vibes, and I'll be back in fighting condition before you know it here.
Yup. Because it's just something you don't want to mess with. Just sometimes you got to
Hey
take
there,
a little time.
Facebook user. I can't see who you are, but
I can't
thanks
either.
for thanks for the but
Welcome.
there's a way on
Yeah.
Facebook if you're watching. You can say allow Facebook to show your name or whatever, and then it'll show up. Hey, there's
It'll pop
Sasha
up.
Bell.
Maybe
Are you
It'll
kidding
pop up.
me?
Zuckerberg.
I know we've missed you, but you know we want you back 100% and feeling better and taking care. You do a lot going on, and sometimes it just knocks the shit out of you, and then somebody comes along and hammers it.
Yeah,
So
and I had to miss the Dogman conference, but
I
the
know.
last thing I wanted to do was go in there and infect a bunch of people with whatever I've got. I think we picked it up on the road, most likely in Idaho because Idaho. And heard on the radio today, there's a worldwide potato shortage. WTF? How do you have a worldwide? I mean, they had to. I don't get it. And
I don't
when we
get it
drove
either.
through, I know that's all there was potato farms and
Potatoes.
this, that, and the other.
Oh, it's Michael Laciano.
Worldwide potato shortage.
Hey,
Sandy
Michael.
went to
Hi,
Vince
sweetie.
today. Couldn't get any potatoes, and that's what it said on the radio that there's a worldwide. Oh, it's Michael Laciano. How you doing, Mike?
Hey,
Good to see you,
darling.
buddy. We want to have you on 13 past midnight sometime, fella.
Yep. You can come right on here again too. We need
He's
to
got
schedule
some of the
that, Mike.
best recorded EVPs that I've
Yep.
ever heard in my entire life. And I think it's him that's haunted. I think that those spirits are drawn to him, and that's why he gets such good ones.
Yep. Just had potatoes tonight. I guess I'm starting growing them. I grew potatoes in buckets this year. In case you don't know about it, just look
Lynn,
it
I'm
up on
not a
the YouTube.
drinker, but if I had some, say, Fireball or some Jack Daniels with the honey in it or some of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff, I'd drink it.
Oh, that stuff's good. I
But
like
I'm
that
just
stuff.
never had a
Hot
taste
toddy.
for alcohol. Drank,
Yeah.
drank a lot of malt liquor in college, but I was young and stupid then.
Mm. Well, I know.
Yeah, another potato thing works there worldwide this time.
Start growing them
Let's
now. You
go,
got the
Brandy.
potatoes that are just sprouting. I'm telling you, I'm not joking. Number one thing that they used at the bottom of the buckets, they were just using, like a 5-gallon bucket from Home Depot. You want to make sure it doesn't have chemicals in it, but you can do that. Put holes in the bottom. You want to put about 4 inches, of your organic material.
Yeah,
I use a
potatoes
lot
are
of
easy
pine
to
needles and
sprout.
stuff
You
like
can
that.
grow yourself.
Yep.
Grow your own.
Just
I mean, it's
just cover it
not as
about
quick as
4
going down to
inches.
the store and getting a bag, but you can grow your own potatoes.
Yep.
I am going to smoke. Believe it or not, smoking makes everything feel better because these are menthol.
And like I said, if you can get some of that silver in too. And I've been absolutely validated because I pulled up some clinical studies on one of my favorite herbs out there, and it actually is doing a lot of good. So hang in there. And hey, Blue, I think I sent that to you in your messages. So stay on it. To stay careful. And like I said, you can grow your own potatoes. It's not too late. I don't know where you are in your growing season, but buckets and things like that for people who have porches. Just YouTube it, and you'll see about 20 different videos. Pick the one that's best for you. Alter it the way you want, but it's a lot easier than you think. I even had tomatoes growing in hanging baskets this year. So, what you do with it after that, freezing, canning, dry, whatever. But, do something and get you some beans. I mean, I don't know what else to say. Get it now. Get it while you can.
Yeah.
Take care of you. Take care of your people and everything. So, but I'm glad to see you, buddy. This Lincoln thing. I don't know if you caught any of it, and but it's been a whirlwind. We've done 2 solid 6 hours worth of episodes so far, and I don't even think we've scratched the surface.
Oh,
To tell you the
oh,
truth.
Mulder?
Who was that? Was that
Mulder.
Toby or Mulder?
Oh no, Toby's right here sleeping.
Oh, okay. It had to be. Was it Mulder, one of your gang?
Ran over to the fence after something there.
I
Mother,
think it's all that good fresh air, Steve, that just knocked you for a loop.
it may be. It's well, and there's altitude sickness too. I lived the last almost 5 years at 35 feet above sea level. Here I'm 5,390 something feet above sea level, I think.
I didn't know it was that high.
That it's higher than I'm used to, and I didn't think it would affect me now, but that may be part of it too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, getting adjusted and stuff like that. But don't underestimate that shit either. Like I said, stay in front of that damn train.
Well,
Speaking
I
of
tested
trains,
negative, but I've got symptoms, so I don't know.
you got
Maybe
cold
something
or
else.
flu.
May just be the
Cold or
plain old flu, but I haven't had the flu since 1985, and the only reason I got it then was I took a flu shot. I haven't had a flu shot since I've had the flu since. Whatever, but this is some kind of upper respiratory thing.
Yep.
Sinuses, throat.
Chop
Like I
up
said,
that
my
garlic. I'm not
checked
joking.
my
Chop that garlic up. Put it in a
95%.
Ziploc bag.
so I'm good.
And breathe
Sandy's
the
probably
fumes.
nurse, so she's taking good care of me.
You breathe those fumes of that garlic because it'll kill sinus infection. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm a
I'm telling you, that
herbalist.
garlic can kill about anything. I
Mhm.
chopped up 3 cloves today and just ate them.
Uh-huh.
I
Good.
let them activate for about 15, 20 minutes and then just chewed them up.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's the way to do it. And like I said, just
Thank you,
putting it
Vicki
in
Harris.
a bag. You can put it in that boiling water. You can use tea tree oil too, and breathe that in. That tea tree gets a lot of
I
that
made hot
bacteria.
tea out of honey and lemon, local raw honey,
Mm-hmm,
and
good.
drank that as hot as I could stand it. That seemed to help a lot. I'm going to do some more of that.
And Vicky
local
sends her
raw
love.
honey,
Everybody's
nice.
sending their love here. There we go. She didn't know you'd been ill. And it'll make your coat shiny, Glenn says.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go. And ginger too. Yep. You don't want to mix too many things. Like I said, you can make red onion tea and all that. Look it up on the YouTube.
Ginger,
and that's
turmeric.
Mm-hmm.
I still don't have
Yep.
any cat's claw.
Mm-hmm. Here, you get you some. I'm telling you what, man. That stuff. Whew. I mean, just on the arthritis alone, I mean, I think I would have the posture of a boiled shrimp if it wasn't for cat's claw. Because everybody in my family, like 10 years.
Burn it off with bourbon.
Yeah, but they all have horrible, the way they're, the hands and their toes and their knees and hip
I
operations.
don't have it yet, but I do have occasional gout, and that's usually a predecessor to
Mm-hmm.
arthritis. Now, my mom's side of the family, I don't think my mom ever had it, but my grandmother had it and several of my uncles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Elvira, you look like Elvira.
AJK, I believe, are you kidding me? Looks like the Greek Elvira.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha. Burn off
And
the
I
fluid
like that
bourbon.
better than regular Elvira.
I think Ted wants you to drink bourbon and set yourself on fire, Steve. I'm not sure. Or maybe
Mulder's
set
getting ready
yourself
to
on
move.
fire and drink bourbon. I'm not sure which one.
Sandy's been cooking chicken
Oh my
for Mulder,
goodness.
and he's having a ball.
He's having him some chicken.
Thank you, Sandy.
Well, that
You know,
sounds awesome.
Betty Pot, I've heard of people doing that, but then also heard about somebody that didn't use the right kind of water and got some sort of amoeba, and it went to their brain
Oh,
and
jeez, Lord God Almighty.
messed them up.
Yep.
I'm scared of neti pots.
Mm. I just use a nebulizer with sovereign silver in it, and man, I'll tell
Hey,
you what,
there's an Edna. How you doing?
that saved me more than anything I can tell you.
Yeah, Blue Cross Road Sandy made ham, beans, and cornbread the other day. There wasn't any poke salad with it, but that sure tasted good. That's the best beans and cornbread I've had since I left the South over
It's
15 years.
actually it's a vine that grows in the rainforests of Peru. It's been used for, God knows, I could easily say 1,000 years, probably beyond that. And it's a vine. It's Mother Nature's kitchen only, like most herbs are. Once you start messing with it, it starts to lose stuff. But it's the whole reason it's called uno de gato, and it's because it's got thorns like the claw of a cat, and that's why they call it cat's claw. But it has nothing to do with cats. And it's got a real
Yeah,
pretty
everybody's telling me
yellow flower on it, just like looks a little like clematis vine or a morning glory, a little bit like that bright yellow flower, real pretty. And you basically you can give it to animals. They sell it now after 30 years of all this herbalists like me shouting it from the rooftops. They're starting to sell it at like chewy.com and PetSmart and stuff like that. You can give it to your animals. My dog was half chow, half shepherd, and he started to get that hip dysplasia, so he started to limp a little bit. And I started giving him cat's claw every day, and that limp went away. And his vet couldn't believe it, and he started selling it at the store. So it's one of those things you really got to look at it for yourself. Any herbalist will tell you have to consider your makeup and everything else in your body, and you have to do your own research and talk to people that can help you through it. But one thing at a time.
Are you kidding me? I got your message. Thank you.
Yep, one thing at a time, and Blue.
By the way,
And
what's a poke salad?
poke is like a wild grass. It kind of looks like, almost looks like a dandelion leaf, it's only thicker.
And you have to cook it just right, or it's poison.
Right. It's
Poke, if you eat it raw, it's poison. You need to fry it in hot grease in an iron skillet.
Yep. There's a lot of good herbs out there, I'll tell you what. No kidding. But, a lot of people make the mistake of just adding too many things all at once, and then you do not know what's working. So one of my rules is first, what pharmaceuticals are you on? What's your makeup? Do you have high blood pressure, low blood pressure? Do you have something, other, a thing going on with you? Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm an herbalist. So,
Hey, Vixen, the other day I had Navajo taco on fry bread. Man, you talk about good.
Is it good?
So good eating out here, that's for sure.
What's the difference between a Navajo taco and a regular taco?
A Navajo
The fry
made it.
bread.
The bread? No.
Fry bread, it's like,
It's
I
fry
don't even know
bread.
how to describe it, but it's like
Yeah.
a tortilla, but it's been deep fried, so it puffs up, and then put beans and corn, and it's
I know nothing about no
we're going
cooking.
into hatch chili season out here too. Like Smith's and all these places, they're pulling these big roasters into the parking lot. Roasted chili peppers are just take over the town. So I'm excited about that. I love roasted peppers, and the Hatch chilies. That's the only place you can get them is here at Hatch, New Mexico. But they're the best green peppers you'll ever have. They're hot peppers.
I'm wondering, Steve, if that new series that came out, Dark Winds, it's based on the Navajo reservation out there, but I'm wondering if they did any filming out that way.
Possibly.
It's an
I'll look into it.
amazing
Well,
series.
there's the sunsets and the sunrises out here are amazing. Some of the just the vistas and stuff. The other day, just to blow off some steam, we went out in the desert and went through about 200 rounds of 9mm ammo, and where we went, it looked like out of Gunsmoke or something out there, like some of those something you'd see in a Western movie, because a lot of stuff was filmed out here. And over in Colorado, I'm about 45 minutes from Durango, Colorado.
Durango, that sounds interesting.
Loving it out here. It's a different type of desert than it is in Nevada. The desert out there, you get outside of Las Vegas, it looks like the moon. But here, there's scrub
That's right,
brush, there's
JK.
tumbleweeds, there's um, pinyon, and some other plants. I'm still learning the flora and fauna of the state. Mulder, you ate. Now be quiet.
I hear you,
Uh,
Glenn. I hear you,
I
Glenn.
don't know if you can see this. I should have sent it to you, but
You sent it to
I was
me
sitting
one
out
this
here.
morning.
We sit out here on the back patio. We've got our computers out here. I sat out here this morning and fell asleep. Woke up. I don't know if you can see that or not, but
Yes, I do.
that's the
It's beautiful.
sunrise. That's the sunrise.
Isn't that
That
something? That's beautiful, man. I did. I saw the colors. Good Lord, what do you got out there? Who's got jets landing in their backyard?
there
That's
we go.
absolutely gorgeous, baby. Look at that.
Oh, just the color and stuff, and the sunsets are like that too. Not today because we got storms coming in. And that was amazing too. I was sitting out here the other day watching a lightning storm, thunderstorm, electric storm, whatever you want to call it, roll across the mesa that's over here on the other side of town. Man,
It's something to
it's
see,
a
huh?
different world out here. But let me show you this place.
Yep.
That's where we went out for some target practice. I don't know if you
Look
can
at
see
that.
that.
Yep, I see it, babe. Look at that sky. Look at the color of that sky.
Yeah, the
Isn't that
sky
something?
looks different out here. It's bluer.
Yeah. I bet
Don't
you
have
the
all the
stars are nice.
chemtrails and stuff that I saw in Oregon. I'm sure they're still out here too. And the clouds and things. It looks like a Bob Ross painting or something.
I can bet you. Look at Susan's thing here. Now, I know exactly what you're talking about, Susan. I've seen that recipe. I have a 1950s pediatrician's written prescription for child cough medicine. 1 part whiskey, 4 parts honey, and lemon. Yes. And my mama used to
May
throw
not feel any better, but you don't care.
she used to throw an aspirin in it, called it a hot
Also
toddy.
take whiskey and put rock candy in it and let that melt. They used to give that to kids.
Yep. Absolutely true. That we
Anybody
used
here
to
know
use
what rock
castor oil.
candy is?
That's just hard sugar, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or are you talking about
crystallized
crack?
sugar.
It's just hard sugar, I think. It's like all
Yeah.
those little things. But yeah,
Yeah,
I bet you the
you
night
take a
stars are pretty.
jar of sugar water, and I don't remember what the mix is. Put a string in it, and the crystals will form up that string. You can make your own rock candy.
Hot toddy, that's right, Lynn. Yup. I still remember my mom giving me that, and the taste of the whiskey and everything else. But I got to tell you, some stereotypes are true, and they say Native Americans shouldn't drink whiskey. Phew. I mean, I proved that one right.
Stay away from the fire water. I've got enough. I'm an 8th Cherokee, so it don't take much from me.
I'm telling you, man. I just my brother will say he never drinks anything he can't see through, and I'm like, well, I'm glad you found a way around it because if I drink that, I'm still fighting.
You just have to drink. You see through the bottom of the bottle, then you can
Right.
see through it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm
Usually there's a
Korean,
worm at the bottom.
we're genetically designed to be alcoholics, so
Well, I understand.
Yeah.
I think it's funny. We used to have all these stereotypes, but there's a little bit of right, and there's a little bit of truth in just about all of it. You know what I mean? A little bit here, a little bit there. And I think sometimes they overdid it, but that's how, it's just genetics. I mean, it is what it is, But and I think maybe, look at Mulder.
there's Mulder.
I think
He's got a
I think
belly full of chicken. Sandy's been cooking fresh chicken for him for the past
you
week
getting
or so.
fat and happy.
I'll bring
Mulder.
Toby here.
Oh, look,
Hey,
Toby.
look.
Oh, look,
Toby's like, what
Mr.
the hell?
Where's Mr. Dickens? Mr. Dickens, look what's on. Look what's
Toby
on
and
here.
Mulder are like staring at each other. He's like, "Who are you?"
Yelling in the microphone. It just blew everybody's earbuds out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Look at those faces.
I'm just like,
Look
I
at
don't know what
those
you're
babies.
doing.
That's what it's all about. I swear, I think that's why the aliens keep
I wonder
coming
if
here, 'cause
Mulder
they don't have
recognizes
animals.
Toby. Can you see Toby? Is he
He's
like,
like,
what
okay.
is this? What is this
He's
dog?
I thought he was about a year old when I got him, and I got him 7 years ago, the first week of June. So he's about 8 years old.
Oh, well, how
Near
about
as we
that,
can
Blue?
tell.
I can count them on hands too, but I need a room full of them, Blue. But it's been a long, long time. I just, like I was telling Donnie, I can't, if I'm going to Gettysburg or I'm doing, if I'm on a thing, I don't do any alcohol or wine or nothing. I might have a beer after,
Yeah.
but that's about it. And I don't think I've had
I
one.
learned the hard way, folks. Never drink on a paranormal investigation.
Please don't.
Never
Please
About
don't.
the only thing I can drink that doesn't bother me is Guinness.
Really? I'm a Boston Lager girl. I drink Patriot beer. Funny thing about that, I don't know how many, show of hands, how many people have seen the old Samuel Adams Boston Lager bottles. For the first, I think, 5 to 7 years it was out, it wasn't Samuel Adams on the damn label of the bottle or the box, the 6-pack. It was Paul Revere. And they left it on there forever, and I'll tell you why. When they started out, it was a small company, an independent beer company, and they were going to call it Revere Beer. And they were going to get all their, that's terrible. They got the labels and everything printed, and we're going to all their money backers, and they said, look, we're going to dig in on this, but you can't call it Revere Beer. It doesn't sound right. How about Samuel Adams if you want to go with, one of the Sons of Liberty, basically, out of the Green Dragon in Boston and all that. And they said, okay, so they called it Samuel Adams, but they didn't have enough money to change the labels, so they ran that sucker for about 7 years. And it was Paul Revere on the cover. So
I would have said,
Little
why
trivia.
don't you call it
And
Paul
nobody knows.
Revere?
Uh-huh. Call it what?
Yeah, Paul Revere.
Paul Revere. Well, they didn't have you,
Yeah.
Donnie. So if
Yeah.
you'd have been
Paul
in that
Revere.
meeting, you might have been able to save it.
That's a
Paul
dead ringer
Revere.
right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like
Paul
the
Revere.
beer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's my beer. I drink Boston Lager.
Samuel Jackson. There you go.
Samuel
I
Jackson.
AJK's got the
Yeah.
right idea.
With the Chappelle Show.
Try my beer, mother.
Try my beer, motherfucker. That'd be funny, yeah. Yeah. All right, well, I think we should get started on Lincoln. You're welcome to join us, Steve, or you should go get some sleep, one of the two.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and take a powder, but I'll listen in. Thanks for understanding, everybody. Sorry, anybody I disappointed by not being at the Dogman convention, but there'll be others.
Look,
up
I had to
ahead.
cancel Waynesboro
And,
for the same thing. Not making people sick. You
Yeah.
know, you did the right thing, man. You did the right thing. You know,
And,
I mean,
I
it's
would have been
terrible we
okay,
miss
but
it,
again, in case I did have something that
Mhm.
was, I didn't want to send a bunch of people home sick that had maybe kids or elderly people or somebody with
Right.
compromised immune system or something.
It's called
Just
being
better
responsible
to stay
and common
quarantined.
sense.
And Sandy has to be careful too. Her doctor recommended that she quarantine for a month just because of some underlying health conditions she has.
Right.
So
Sometimes
thanks,
you have to
everybody.
be.
I love each and every one of
We
you.
love you, sweetheart.
Um,
We love you. See you tomorrow. I'm gonna talk
Ronnie,
to you, okay? If you
thanks
need
again,
anything,
buddy.
you call me. I will be in a car, on a plane, on a train, fly a broom to get to you. If you need help, you call me anytime. You know
All right.
that. Love you,
Okay. Thanks,
sweetheart.
folks. Have a good show. Much love, everybody. Thank you.
Bye,
Take care
honey.
of
Get
yourself,
well.
Steve.
Thanks.
Have good sleep. There you go. All right. Well, there you
Did you
go.
say
I
you were
told
going to
him.
fly on a broom, sister?
Yeah, I did. Just whatever. And
Yeah, is there
magic
something
carpet.
you're not telling me,
Magic,
Cisco?
magic carpet, maybe.
Yeah. A
Magic
magic carpet ride?
Yeah. So, yep, there you go. So, yeah, I would get to him in a heartbeat, but I know he's in good hands over there with Sandy, and I just hope she's taking good care of herself too. Because that's what happens.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. Was taking care of everybody else at work and here, and I didn't stay on my, as much on myself. I kept running, and bam, boom. That was it. I was done. I mean, I slept for 3 days. I didn't even get up to get coffee. And if you knew me, you would go, she didn't what? So, yeah, you got to take care of yourself. Breathe that garlic. And again, like I said, I'm no doctor, but if you were here, I'd make you my salsa with the cayenne pepper in it and the chopped up garlic, and just, it just boosts your immune. And then there's, other stuff too out there, of course your zinc and your C and your other things. But, a lot of people take those compound vitamins and they're just crap because they're going to do the lowest amount that they can put in there to put on the label, and they're going to get the cheapest stuff. They don't care how it's processed. So be careful where you're buying your stuff. If you can get dry bulk herb, great. If you grow it yourself, even better. I'm going to try to get that wonderful doctor, Apillian, on, and she's amazing. And I've talked about her before, how they told her she was going to be in a wheelchair for life. She was pretty much bedridden, and she was in a wheelchair. And she changed everything with her diet and some herbs. Lion's
look at what
mane
Susan
mushroom and
Woodcarver
stuff.
said.
Say again?
Look at what Susan Woodcarver said.
Let me see here. Cisco and Donnie, listen to yesterday's Lincoln show this morning. It was great. Thank you so much. I'll tell you what, we had a ball. I feel really bad that I went over that last part really quickly because there's a lot of good stuff in there about, and we're going to revisit that. But Donnie thought that, everybody usually waits on Monday Madness for Steve, and we missed him last week. And hi, Mairead, welcome in, sweetheart. And maybe get a little break from it. So Donnie's idea was he was going to do this as the last part and bring in the whole Caesar thing. I know nothing about this, so it's all new. It's all going to be new to me. The only thing I know about Caesar is when I found out his dressing had anchovy paste in it, I was done. So, because I don't do anchovies. But other than that, I don't even know. Did they have salad back then, Donnie? How did that whole thing come about? Do you know?
I think they did. I don't know if they used dressing. They did use a lot of oil. They used olive oil actually because soap hadn't been invented yet.
I would think.
Yeah.
I
Apparently
mean,
it works too. I've never tried bathing in olive oil, but apparently it works.
Well, a lot of Native Americans use buffalo grease and things like that. So
Yeah.
I mean that's how, it's, and again, olive oil for your hair. I mean, gosh, that's great. If you can get it, even better grapeseed oil because it absorbs faster and it's not as thick. It's a great carrier oil too if you're mixing your own essential oils to do perfumes or lotions and stuff like that. So we should have just did an herb show today, I think, Donnie.
Yeah.
But anyway,
we should do
how
like
do you
one
want
day.
to start? Huh?
No, I was gonna say one day we should do like an all herbal show.
Well, I'm
just
trying to
talk
get
about, like,
Dr.
different
Appelian
remedies.
on. I mean, she is absolutely fantastic. I mean, if you guys have ever watched Alone, she was one of the few women that ever, coconut oil is really good too.
Yeah.
Love coconut oil. Pure unrefined coconut oil is really good to take internally. The virgin, unrefined coconut oil is best for internal, but you can get that regular coconut oil at the dollar store or Walmart or wherever you purchase stuff. It's not that expensive to do, to make your own lotions or your hair or your beard, like you said. And the funny thing is when I started making my own soaps and things and using a lot of kaolin clay and stuff like that, when you look at the ingredients on an organic, anything, whether it's makeup, lotion, whatever, and you look at the active ingredient and you wonder, okay, I'm taking this to get the, say, avocado oil, or I'm using this to get the argan oil or whatever. So why aren't you just using the argan oil? Why do you want all of the water, the glycerin, all the other stuff they mix in there? Put your own fragrance in it and go from there. Walnut oil, bathe her flute in walnut oil. How about that? So that's what, kind of starts, you kind of look at it and go, why am I taking this? Because the funny thing is valerian root, and I know I've said this before on this, and then I'll shut up about herbs, but the whole thing, be calm and drink tea, comes from World War II out of Europe, where they would drink valerian root tea or skullcap tea mixed with mint, because mint is very good not only for a different kind of mint, it's for different things, but it has its own antibiotic properties and different things like that, but also for the taste and the smell, because valerian root smells like boiled gym socks. Cats love it for some reason. I don't know what that's about, but they'll follow you anywhere if you put that in your pocket. If you ever try to get a stray cat, drop valerian root powder, because, man, they're going to follow it. And skullcap, which is also a calming thing. Now, valerian root is the active ingredient in Valium. So you got to figure they cannot patent an herb, so they have to mix it with something so they can patent it. And then that patent only lasts for so long, so they have to change it. So they put an extra pinch of baking soda or whatever it is, but your active ingredient is valerian root. So if you want to be calm, you go straight to the valerian root.
You mean to tell me those pharmaceutical companies are just out for profit? My God, Cisco.
It's just a surprise.
My
I
God.
know. Can you imagine
My
that?
brain is melting.
What? Aspirin, active
What?
ingredient in aspirin, willow bark. The first powwow I went to, somebody said, man, I got a headache. And we were walking. He walks up to the tree and he looks at the tree, pulls off a branch, starts chewing it. And I'm like, I'm thinking he's chewing it to make like a toothbrush, because you can bite it down to get all the, almost like a paintbrush you're making with your teeth, with the frayed frayed branch, right? And he's like, no, this is willow bark. I'm curing my headache. And I'm like, what? Speak to me, tell me more, so it's amazing. Yeah, valerian root's real good for sleep, and a lot of these natural sleep aids are going to have that, melatonin, skull cap. Some teas do. So look through your teas, go in there and look at some of these decent organic brands, and you can get them already mixed, or you can go dry bulk herb and get you a little tea infuser, and you can make your own stuff. This goes way back. It's not just Native American. It goes back to every tribal culture you can imagine. That's why I went Chinese and Native American when I got bit by the spider, so I could fight it that way, and I'm still here. And I know Blue says it's no big deal, but I've known several people that have died from one brown recluse spider bite, and they were pretty big dudes. They were, they were camping, and one got it in a tree, one got it in a sleeping bag, and one was in his old truck and climbed up, bit him in the neck, and he was gone. It just hit them. The amount of poison, where they bite you, and how much activity you do after the fact. So if you're thinking it's just a little bite, you're still moving and moving. What do they tell you when you get bit by a rattlesnake? The more you move, the faster the venom's going to move through your blood, right? So that's the same thing, so that, and the fact that it's so painful. Oh my God. I don't know how many of you did it. If you're squeamish, do not do it. But if you doubt what I say, Google brown recluse spider bite right now. And like I said, if you are squeamish, don't do it. But if you're tough and you want to see, it looks like shark attack by about the 4th day, because the necrosis just keeps eating your tissue. And to think that I made a couple of phone calls that some an absolutely wonderful medicine man and a couple of chiefs, they went through the lines, because everybody's like underground at this point. If you're traditional, it's crazy, but it's true. And actually called me and started talking. What do you have? Do you have burdock root? Yes, I do. Do you have this? Yes, I do. I can get that. And what to do. And you'd be surprised the stuff that saved my life. So, and all of it was Mother Nature's garden. So just remember that. Get those buckets out, start growing your own stuff, and get a book of wild plants in your area. Get to know what's in your backyard. Really pay attention to it, and remember to only harvest a third and leave 2/3, one to Mother Nature and her weather, and the other to grow and keep it going. We never use all.
Absolutely nothing about plants. It's sad. It's real sad. I know so little about plants.
Yep.
Yeah, I know a lot about animals and
wild
biology, but just plants and botany, I'm so clueless.
What's wild haggis? I thought haggis was something that was stuffed in a stomach and buried in the ground and in the intestines, or some kind of horrible haggis.
Yeah, it's like wrapped in stomach, and I forgot what it's stuffed with. It's like,
oh, stop it! Oh my God! People always ask me.
In Korea, we have a dish that's kind of similar, I guess.
I don't know, Vixen.
Sausage.
I know the wolf spiders will kill a brown recluse. I know, believe it or not, cats and small dogs small dogs, wolf spiders are all like number one sheep splatter. There you go. Ooh. I don't know why that sounds awful, but it does. But they kill brown recluse. And what I found, now this is going back, and just in case somebody needs to hear it, I'm going to say this and I'm going to shut up. But what happened was, when you started calling all of these bug sprayers like Orkin and stuff, and they spray the whole house, well, it's killing the wolf spiders and other things, and it's not affecting the brown recluse. So the brown recluse really became overrun, because they're like they're territorial. So I think they said like 25 feet. It could have been 25 yards. I think it's 25 feet. That makes more sense. So if you're in that area, or another thing is in that, it's attacking you. And so that's what happened. You're killing everything in the house but the brown recluse. So you can get those sticky things and put it under your bed. That helps. Different stuff like that. Shake your shoes out before you put them on. A friend of mine got bit because she hung her pantyhose on the line outside, and with her all of her other clothes. And when she got dressed, she didn't notice there was a brown recluse in one, and she put those things on. And boy, I'll tell you what, it must have been like Saturday night at the hoedown with her jumping around like crazy. That thing was biting her, and she could not get out of those pantyhose fast enough. And it sounds funny, but it's not. I mean, she got bit 4 times. She almost lost her leg. She got bit like 4 times, man. Her leg was the size of a telephone pole. It was, it's incredible. What nature can do, but just beware, be safe, look up how to beat them, how to recognize them, and try not to get bit. There you go. Right, Donnie? All right,
I don't want to be anywhere
sweetheart.
near them.
Where do you want to start? Now, last night we left off with, we went real quick through Booth's escape. There's a lot more on that, but Donnie wanted to give you a little break tonight, so Donnie's going to take the reins, and he sent me some pictures. Now, I will give you a head-up warning. There's going to be some naked women in here, so if you're squeamish, and you can't stand it, I know, Mairead, you're going to want to cover your eyes. You're not going to be able to handle this. Who I'm talking to. I hope she's still here.
The nakedness is actually kind of important to one of the points I wanted to raise.
The nakedness is important, Donnie says. So, if it's for history and art,
for educational purposes, it's okay.
So here we are, and this is what we're doing tonight. Now, how do you pronounce his first? Is that Gaius?
Gaius Julius Caesar.
Gaius Julius Caesar.
Basically, in ancient Rome, everyone just had like the same 5 first names. You're either Gaius or Marcus or Cornelius, but it was like every other person's name was Gaius. So.
It's like Mary and Sarah and John.
Like I noticed in the Civil War stuff, I'm like, is every other person named Ed? There's so many Eds in this story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Edwin Booth, Edwin Stanton.
Right. A lot of Sarahs, a lot of Marys, a lot of Johns. There's quite a few of them.
So you'll see like a lot of similar first names popping up over and over when you look at like Roman history.
Yep.
So I guess we could start. I could
okay, sounds good to me.
I wanted to start by telling a quick story.
Sure, go right ahead. I wanted to point one very important thing out. And then I'll shut up. I keep saying that, don't I? Crispy has been extremely happy since we did Lincoln, because he got to wear his Lincoln top hat, and I think he looks very dapper. So, there he is. He's looking pretty good. He's got his Lincoln hat on. He's got a big hat collection, and that is one of his favorite things to put on. So he's up front and center between these two, because Donnie says he's gonna kind of pull it all together. Okay, so do you want a picture or no?
I'll just introduce it real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
A couple years back, I was talking to this woman that I knew who was an African-American lady, and she was very much into the history of American slavery, because she could trace her family roots all the way back to the plantations that her great-great-great-grandmother worked on. And, she still had a lot of very strong feelings and emotions and a lot of bitterness still about the history and towards, I guess, the American institutions that allowed something like that to happen, where her family members would be enslaved. And she was very angry about it, bitter about it, blaming people left and right. And, we got into a bit of a discussion about history. And I started bringing up the notion of Roman slavery and just started comparing and contrasting it, showing how similar and different it was. And I felt like it gave her a different point of view, because she started getting a little less bitter about it and started to think of it more from a macro perspective. Like, if it is really... It's hard to say which one is objectively better or worse. They're both awful, but they're both awful in very different ways. And in some ways, certain ones are there are things that are objectively better for one side than the other, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's a good and healthy exercise to try to look back at a time in history that was, in a lot of ways, mirrors our own country in America, because I feel like ancient Rome, in a lot of ways, they were very different. Their history was different, the culture was different, but when you look at the big picture of what they were going through and what's been going through with this country ever since the forefathers came and declared their independence, you see a lot of interesting parallels. Namely because the forefathers were themselves students of Rome, the founding fathers. I mean, not the forefathers, the founding fathers, right?
Right.
They themselves were students of Rome. And when they were writing up the Constitution and when they were engineering a government, a lot of the questions they had was, well, Rome had a democracy. They had a democratically elected republic, right? They had senators, they had presidents. Why did that fail? And how can we improve on it? And how can we make sure we don't end up like Rome? That was a
So
question that a
interesting.
lot of them asked when they were writing up the Constitution. That's why a lot of the founding fathers would debate about Rome, like in their free time. They'd be at the ale house and they'd be like, well, what do you think about Brutus assassinating Julius Caesar? What do you think was a good guy or a bad guy, and why? And I know Abraham Lincoln was also a student of ancient Rome. I mean, that was a very popular topic, especially for a lot of people who are involved in civics, because a lot of what American civics is trying to avoid the mistakes of Rome. That's why I think it's important to and I'm surprised at how little people actually know about it, because as soon as I found out about Rome, I was obsessed with it, because I was like, yo, this is like a crazy version of America.
I love it. And I loved it when he said that to me. And when Donnie started telling me about this, and I said, don't give me all the details because I know nothing about it. But he's 100% correct when he talks about the founding fathers debating on Rome. And that was one of the things that Ben Franklin loved to do, because he was our guy to go over and talk. He was our ambassador, our foreign ambassador, and so he went to France and all these different places, and he loved it because he loved the ladies and he loved to talk. And that's where he would wear that raccoon hat that you see him in some of the pictures, because everybody out there thought that we were all skinners and furriers and everything else. That's what they heard about. And when you hear about when they went through and killed all the buffalo and just skinned them and left them there, which they showed in the movie Prey we just saw, all of that was going over across the ocean, because that they just wanted a piece of America, and everything was buffalo blankets and beaver hats. So they about wiped out just about everything. But he's 100% correct on them talking about Rome and the government, and like you said, what collapsed it, what went wrong, and how can we prevent it. Spot on, Donnie. Yep.
And it was a very bipartisan system as well. They had, how today we've got the Republicans and the Democrats. They had the populares and the optimates. Anyway, Laura keeps texting me.
You get Tinder hits? What's going on?
No, it's Laura actually. We're just gossiping. Anyway.
Are you? I'm glad she's feeling better.
Oh yeah,
we miss her in the chat though. We miss her in the chat.
Oh, and for the people who are wondering, Laura does listen. She usually does other stuff, but she's lurking. She's a lurker. Don't worry.
We love you, Laura.
Yeah. So where was I? Oh yeah.
You
guess
said two words I wasn't familiar with. Now you said, can you repeat that? Was that the two?
Oh yeah, the populares and the optimates. They were basically our equivalent of the left and the right.
Okay.
The progressives and the conservatives. You had the populares and the optimates. They had senators. They actually had two presidents, which is weird.
Odd that.
Yeah. I personally believe the reason why the founding fathers came up with the whole system of checks and balances, especially with regards to the Supreme Court, was specifically designed to prevent what happened in Rome. Because they sort of needed a Supreme Court and they didn't, and there was a lot of chaos because of it. They seem to get into civil wars once every decade. They love going to war with each other.
Yeah. I think Blue, you're absolutely right here. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Donnie, but I wanted to post this because it's absolutely true. We are a republic, and everybody says it's a democratic society to a point, and then it's a republic. And I'll tell you the difference. A democracy is two lions and a lamb trying to decide what to have for lunch. Think about that. Go ahead, Donnie.
Well, I mean, Athens actually did do the whole true democracy thing, and one of the things they learned pretty early on was that it's not entirely effective, especially when it comes to infrastructure, because nobody can agree on anything, and it was especially not effective in times of war.
Yeah.
because yeah, nobody could agree to decide to which way do we mobilize the army. They just didn't know. That's why when the Persians invaded, Sparta was like, you know what, screw this, we're gonna do it our own way. But yeah, that's another story.
Sparta. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah, but
Absolutely. Now, do you want
yeah,
some pictures, sweetie?
yeah. I guess we could go to the first slide.
And I'm hoping I have them in the right order, but
Yeah, they look for the most
Miss
part. Yeah,
Crispy and his
yeah.
hat. Okay. Here
So
we
the guy
go.
we're comparing today is yeah, Gaius Julius Caesar. That is him seated. That is in his probably his proudest moment of his life in his military career when he was that guy on the horse is man, I keep forgetting how to pronounce his name. Vercingetorix was his name. He
Wow.
was basically the European version of like a Tecumseh or a Sitting Bull or a Crazy Horse.
Okay.
He was the guy who was just tired of having, Europe back then was basically tribes. People in Europe lived like how the Native Americans lived, right? They lived in tribes. They lived in, much closer to nature. They had like shamans. They worshiped nature spirits. They lived off the land. There were like
Hmm.
hundreds of different tribes. And then, just like with the Native Americans, the thing that was threatening these tribal peoples was this big industrialized military machine. For the Native Americans, it was the European colonists in America. With Vercingetorix and the Gauls, it was the imperial might of Rome, led by Julius Caesar. So he's like their version of like Sitting Bull or Tecumseh, and that's him surrendering.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, and
Oh.
that was one of the hardest battles that Julius Caesar ever had to fight. Like it was Julius Caesar came into that with 70,000 men, and Vercingetorix had about 250,000 men, and Caesar still won.
Holy mackerel. Was it just how they fought? Was it weaponry? Was it, did they cheat? I mean, how did they?
It was logistics and engineering. It was
Okay.
because of the fact that they were really good at building walls and bridges and like forts overnight, and that's basically, I believe, is and a lot of military historians will believe that is what won him
Mm,
Europe.
wow.
And
I'd
also
never
more
heard this. That's
discipline.
amazing.
And they were more disciplined, better at keeping formation. There was a lot of things that went into it.
Hmm.
So for me, the whole learning about the Civil War is new to me. Learning about Abraham Lincoln was new to me. So I mean, I already knew about this, but me finding out as I read more and more about Abraham Lincoln, right? As I learned more and more about Lincoln and his life, and learned the details about like some of his political career and
Hmm.
some of the situations that he had to go through. Um, this, Susan Woodcarver, I believe this is like 60 BC, by the way. Um, the more I learned about Lincoln, the
60?
more,
I'm sorry,
yeah,
did you say
60
60?
BC, yeah,
Okay.
around there, give or take,
Okay.
around when he was 40. Um, when uh, when I was learning more and more about Lincoln, I was like, this is weird. He's kind of like this weird version of Julius Caesar because they're both regarded as like their greatest. Like Julius Caesar is regarded as the greatest Roman. Abraham
Okay.
Lincoln is regarded as the greatest American. And a lot of details about their life kind of are parallel. Like there's a
Okay.
lot of similarities in like their circumstances, and also in their assassinations and their deaths and their impact on their nation. There's a
Hmm.
lot of parallels, right? But the
Hmm.
other interesting thing is where they're different, they are polar opposites. They're
Wow.
like completely polar opposites. So it's almost like Julius Caesar is like, if you ever ask yourself one day, what if Abraham Lincoln was born with all the same talents and skills and willpower, but he was like evil and selfish,
Hmm.
and totally driven by ego?
Hmm.
I mean, that's pretty much what Julius Caesar was.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
it's a stretch to call him evil, because he also did a lot of good things, and we'll get into that. But before we go too deep, I think it's also important to talk about the difference between Roman and American slavery, which will
Okay.
go into our next slide.
Oh, next one.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was reading the chat.
So I said before how in Europe, the people. So one of the things that I always found very interesting was that people blame white Europeans for what happened with the African slaves, right? Because they were the ones who were taking the slaves, bringing them over to the States. It was white European or their descendants who were the owners of these slaves, right? Like the people in the South.
The
It-
aristocrats, which
yeah,
carried over into the South, and there was
and
a lot of that aristocratic thoughts. Yes.
it was also white Europeans who were responsible for a lot of the devastation that the Native Americans experienced. And I'm like, am I the only one who sees the irony in this? That it was those same white Europeans whose ancestors had the exact same treatment done to them
Mm.
by the Romans, like whatever, they were the ones being enslaved. Now, here's one of the differences with Roman slavery. They did not discriminate. They didn't care about your race or how you looked. Basically, anybody can be a slave. But the majority of the slaves came from Europe in places of what they are now, like France, Germany, Belgium, Spain, later on Britain, just
Incredible.
all over around like Europe. That's where they got the majority of their slaves. It's not that white people were designated a slave race, because there were also like free white people as well in Rome. So the way I put it is like this, all right? Cisco, let's say I put you in a time machine and I take you back to time in Imperial, or the time of Julius Caesar, and I drop you in the middle of like a Roman marketplace where there's like, shops and food vendors and people going around. Probably about 40% of the people you see in the streets are slaves, and then the rest would be free people. But you would not be able to distinguish who was who, because they
Wow.
all dress the same, they all look the same, and they didn't care. The majority of the slaves came from Europe, but there were also slaves from like Asia and the Middle East and Africa. It's right. Race was not a thing, right? So when I was debating with that woman, I was like, so which one's better? Is it the American system where they only have one race that they designated, okay, these people are slaves and we're just going to enslave these people? Or the Roman system where they're like, anyone and everyone can be a slave?
And it was just basically economic and whether or not they
It was
took
basically
over.
people they defeat in battle. And also, another great source of slaves were from other Romans, people who were in debt and had to enter like
Oh,
indentured servitude.
okay.
Or some people sometimes would sell off their kids for money. Um, they tended to like trade their kids like baseball cards. One things you notice. Another thing is if they're convicted of a like minor crime, maybe the punishment will be like a couple years of slavery. So like even Roman citizens can be a slave, and there's a lot of people who were former slaves who are now free, who now have slaves of their own.
It's like we don't learn. I mean, to think about that in the European, and then turn around and do that again, even if it's amount of time, a couple hundred years or whatever. It's again that repeat. If we do not learn from history, we are destined to repeat it. So it's almost like a revenge thing. Like we're on top now, and we're going to have to. That's the thing about slavery that gets me. It's not just the bondage and the horror of the whole thing, but it's that mindset that I'm going to keep you down so I can feel better about myself. So it's the same type of thing as that bully mentality in even a school, a middle school or something, where the bully is bullied at home, goes to school to bully other kids that aren't going to stick up for themselves to feel better. And I wonder, as a society, if we've got that out of our system yet. So that's just it. Blows my
There are
mind.
some people who might look more favorably, like if they had to decide which one was better or worse, they might give points to the Roman system because at least it was fair, because like fair game, anyone can be a slave, because there was no racial component, there was no discrimination component, like it was just basically anyone.
Exactly, and
Another
Edna. Yep.
another instance where it could be argued that the Roman system was a little, I guess, easier on the slaves was that slaves can and were given their freedom. Um, Sometimes the slave owners, after they reach a certain age, would grant them freedom because, just as their retirement. Sometimes they would befriend them, or they grew to like really care about them, and then they would grant them their freedom, and they would still keep them on as employees. And now they're free people, and they're just getting a regular paycheck. Other times they'll do things like maybe a slave showed some heroic moment of loyalty. So, like, the notion of freedom was always hung as a carrot for a lot
Okay.
of these slaves. And that was very carefully designed because a lot of Romans believed that if the slave had no chance of freedom, then they would have like nothing to motivate them to work harder. But if you dangle that carrot of, hey, you could be free, that motivates a lot of the slaves to actually work harder and try to appease their masters, right?
Mm.
So there are actually a lot of stories in Roman and ancient Greek cultures of like slaves and masters actually getting like really close and like developing loyalties to the point where like slaves would actually go out and kill for their master,
Mm.
you
Can't
know.
imagine that. Yeah.
Um, and here's the other thing. In Roman society, it was heavily, heavily looked down upon if you were caught abusing your slaves. It was like
Oh,
a
good.
cultural taboo. They had two kinds of slaves. They had the chattel slaves, which were very much like the American system, where they worked in these giant plantations or in these mines,
Okay.
and that operated very similarly because back then they had it's like they had these huge rich entities buying up these huge swaths of farmland, so they had these giant plantations that were run by like thousands of slaves and they never even saw their masters, and those people got worked to death, right?
Mm.
And there's no which way around it. Those people got worked to death, and even worse were the slaves that got sent to the mines. In the mines you got worked to death, right? That was like
Sweet
where
Lord.
they sent the slaves, like that's where you don't want to go as a slave. But then the other half were domestic slaves. Now these were urban slaves, and this is what makes slavery in ancient Rome very different from America, because there were, you know, in the South, it's a lot of country, a lot of open space. But can you imagine what it would look like if people in New York City had slaves? And then people, you could see, like, for example, there would be like a typical middle class Roman who would live in like a two-bedroom apartment, and it would just be him, and then the next bedroom would be his slave. It's just
It's
like your
incredible.
master and your one slave, and you're sharing like a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment, and that's like what Rome looked like. See, we don't
Hmm.
imagine slavery in the urban setting. We only imagine it in the context of the South with these plantations, right?
True.
But a
True.
lot of slaves in Rome were basically urban slaves, where you had Roman citizens living in their villas or in their apartments, and the Roman slaves were responsible for things like their hairstylist or teaching their kids, like their nannies, their personal doctors, their personal dentists. The most prized slaves in Roman society were actually the educated ones,
Hmm.
and they were often used as like a means of like showing off to your friends. Like, oh man, look at Marcus over there. He's got an actual doctor slave. Oh man, that's like having a Lamborghini today,
Oh man.
you know. And
Yeah.
that was like the culture behind it. It's a very alien and bizarre culture, you know.
Mm. And
Um,
this picture here is obviously
okay,
what their equivalent of a slave market would be.
yeah, it would be the auction, and this girl is clearly fair-skinned European, probably taken from one of the Gaelic tribes. And what they would do is, when you're brought out to the auction, one of the rules was slaves were always buck naked if they before they were sold, because that would show that they haven't been bought yet. And the reason why they were completely naked is because before they are sold, the prospective buyers, they want to make sure there are no defects or disease or injury. They got to be able to see every inch, right?
Oh, jeez.
But then at the auction, they also had another kind of slaves that were on sale, which were also completely naked, except they had a cap on. And the cap was basically to indicate that there was no money back guarantee. Because typically they had like a money back guarantee, like if
Oh
the
my
owner didn't like
gosh.
them after 30 days. But they had a cap on, it's like all sales are final.
As is.
And the some of the most prized personally, and the ones that were most people were most proud of, and they actually treated very well and dressed very well, were the educated slaves. But the other kind of slave that was also highly in demand were young European boys, fair skinned, blonde hair, blue eyes, because the Romans thought they looked like little angels, and they like to take them home and make them as their pets, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yep.
And there was
We
a
still got
lot
a
of
lot of
weird
those
sexual
sickos
stuff
now.
going on. There was a lot of
Oh
weird
God.
sexual stuff going on with
You
that
know,
too.
that's one thing that I did know about them. And you get back, you start talking about Caligula and all that. I mean, these people were ruthless. I mean, they would, I mean, again, I just don't understand why, all this time we're not learning from history and we don't wipe this kind of crap out. Seriously. Yeah, disgusting things humans do to other human beings.
Now, okay, wait, hold on. Can you go back to that?
Sure. The
Um,
last one? Yep.
so I'll give you an argument for why the American system gets a couple points over the Roman system. There was another big difference that the Roman system lacked, and that was abolitionists. There were no such thing as abolitionists in the
Okay.
ancient world. There is no mention in any of the literature, and we have a lot of the documents from a lot of great thinkers, even the great Greek philosophers who are so austere and august in their philosophies and their wisdom. Even with all their writings, not a single one mentions, hey, maybe slavery might be wrong. The word abolitionist does not exist in their vocabulary. It does not exist in their national zeitgeist or in their collective consciousness.
It was just
Nobody
so
questioned it.
inbred. It was just so inbred in them
It's
that
so
they just didn't
inbred,
even.
like even in the Bible. If you look up
Yeah.
references to slavery in the Bible, there's a ton in the Old Testament, and none of them condone the institution of slavery. They
Hmm.
don't. I mean, they don't condemn it, but they don't condone it either.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
just like you could tell the attitude of a lot of the Old Testament writers were just kind of like accepting of it.
Hmm.
As a matter of fact, there is a passage in the book of Numbers, chapter 31, where God actually commands Moses to like slaughter, like when he attacks one of the enemy tribes, God commands Moses to kill off all the men, non-virgin females, and only take the virgin females as slaves. And that was a command from God in the book of
Yeah.
Numbers to Moses. And
Yep.
that's one of the things I don't like to mention.
Yeah.
Um,
It's true.
even
That
in the
first that first half, man. Woo. That's just the first half of the Bible, man.
yeah.
There's some amazing stuff in there. Like I said, it's like the biggest game of telephone, but you got to think of who was
Um,
editing that thing. You know what I'm
Another
saying?
difference between Rome and America is that there was no such thing as a free zone. You know how the Union was like the free zone?
Yeah.
As long as they
Yeah.
run over there, like they knew this area, there were no slaves. That did not exist in the Roman world. Anyone and everyone can be a slave anywhere at any time.
Jeez.
Um,
I can't even imagine. I had no idea about this. I really didn't. This is just it blows my mind. And again, I just wonder. You said 60 BC. This is my God.
there's one
2000
on.
something years, and we're not learning. Like Ted says, sounds like today. Then,
Oh,
yeah.
and I don't want to make it seem like Rome was the only place in ancient history that was doing this. They
Mhm.
were all doing it the
Mhm.
whole time. You know.
Mhm. Mhm.
So this is a picture of the assassination of Julius Caesar. Now, okay, I want to get into.
Now, how did obviously Julius Caesar was all for slavery? There was no abolitionists. There was not. So in that way, he was the 180 from Lincoln.
No, he was the 180 for Lincoln because of all the people in history, he probably single-handedly enslaved the most people out of anyone in
Okay.
history. Like he enslaved millions of people.
Mhm.
Like he spent 10 years in Europe, going between Gaul and the Germanic tribes and Hispania, basically all over Western Europe for like 10 years, just rounding up entire populations and basically giving them a choice: either complete genocide, or we just kill your army and then we take all the women and children as slaves.
Mhm.
And he was raking in so many slaves that they had slave trader like caravans following his army, so they can immediately lock those people up and send them off to auction. I mean, this guy enslaved more people than probably any other person in human history single-handedly.
That's it.
That is how he is the polar opposite of Lincoln.
Nobody else ever order another Caesar salad as long as you live. Do not support this man. That's a Cisco request. There you go. Or the dressing and his anchovy paste. Just saying.
Like millions of people, millions.
Horrible. Horrible. So what happened around his? This is the death of Caesar.
Yeah, actually, before we get to the death of Caesar,
Sure.
I
Where do
want
you
to
want to
start.
go?
I want to start talking about how Caesar and Lincoln were similar.
Okay, go right ahead.
Um, so, one of the things that was notable for me that I learned recently is that they both started off as lawyers, as young men. Caesar spent his 20s as a lawyer. He actually was born to a noble family,
Hmm.
but the noble family was flat ass broke. Like grew up in the slums. He had like a noble birth, but his family just didn't have any money. And that could
Okay.
happen. You could be an aristocrat and be broke and still be living in the slums. Your name is not going to carry you that far in Roman society because it's all about your own personal deeds. Um, there wasn't very much nepotism. Like you would have to get your foot in the door by having a noble name, and then it depends on like what you do. So Caesar grew up like kind of in the slums, but he had a famous uncle that he learned, he learned a lot of military leadership from. But then when that time was over, basically he spent his early 20s as a self-taught lawyer, just like Lincoln. And a lot of his early lawyering was defending the little guy. In this case, the little guy is like poor Roman citizens. See, the thing is, Julius Caesar has a good reputation because he was known as the guy who looked out for the little guy,
Mm-hmm.
ironically enough, because to him, the only thing that constitutes a little guy is Roman citizens. And he was looking out for poor Roman citizens, poor free men. He was representing them against like corrupt bureaucracy, and he was kind of known as a bit of a hero lawyer, and that's how he got started. Just like Lincoln. Lincoln was like a really good lawyer, self-taught, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they both. So Caesar takes his first office, official government office, when he was like 32,
Mm-hmm.
and
Hang on just a second, Donnie. I want to address this because it has to do with this. We absolutely know that, Glenn, and we're going to explain that. Lincoln had a reason for that, and we're going to explain that because this has definitely got at least another episode, and then we've got all the paranormal, supernatural, woo stuff, and the ghosts and the stories. And Donnie and I talked about this, and they said, well, we can rush through this and not do it justice, or we can do like we did with Amityville, get it all out there and then close the door on it, done. Because there's just so much. I mean, even if you picked apart the Civil War and talked about Antietam and Gettysburg and all of that and what was going on, but you're absolutely correct. It only again, at that point in time, and that was in his desk for a long time. He was waiting for a win because he was trying. The way Frederick Douglass said it, and I'll say it this way and end it. Frederick Douglass said it best. He was the old rail splitter. And how you split a rail is you take a wedge and you hit it with a maul. And as the wedge goes in, little by little by little, it finally splits the rail. He wanted to hold the Union together first and foremost, because without that, there was nothing. Like he said, it's not going to be half this and half that. It's going to be all one or the other. And he thought it was his duty, set forth by God, pretty much, that it was his duty to hold the Union together, but get this slavery thing first to keep it from spreading. Okay, like with Kansas, bloody Kansas, and then if all he could do was stop it there, he actually sat and thought maybe it will just die out. If there's no more new ones, he stopped, them coming across, and that was it. And if that's all he could do, but hold the Union together, he would do it. He even said, if I could hold the Union together by freeing the slaves, I would do it. And anything in between, but without the Union, it made no sense because he didn't want it to split up and stay split up. So that you're absolutely correct, but the 13th Amendment took care of the
and
rest.
that's another. I mean, I was going to get to that later, but that's
Yep.
another reason why Caesar and Lincoln were polar opposites.
Mm-hmm.
Caesar's motivations for his civil war was basically just screw your government,
Mm-hmm.
just screw you. It was completely selfish. It was completely just he started it. Like he started it, and he's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I guess I'm starting it. I guess I'm going to war with the government, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm either going to win or I'm going to die. There was no such thing. I mean, he broke the Union. I
Yeah.
mean, okay.
And Susan Wood Carver says, no, don't rush. But there's so much good stuff,
Yeah.
and we didn't want to do that. So we'll probably have at least 2 more episodes of this. But like I said, Donnie thought it would be a great idea to do this, which is kind of this. It's in the Lincoln thing, but learning about Caesar and all that stuff. So we're just trying to give you all we can give you because we love you so much and so much research. I bet I've been researching this, I mean, steady for probably 9 weeks. And I know Donnie has been doing it for quite a while too. And reading the books and digging and digging, looking for answers. And I mean, even to the minute um, details where if a room full of scholars are still arguing about it, how can we be definite on it? So we're telling you the truth. We're not, I'm more sure that Mudd was guilty now because of all the stuff we've dug up and all the information that he was introducing John Surratt and John Wilkes Booth via Montreal, Canada, and the spies that were up there. We told you it was like Little Richmond. So, we're definitely going to get into all this, but we don't want to rush you guys because we don't want to cheat you. And, again, I'm leaving this for however YouTube lasts, and on a, whatever for my,
One day,
grandkids.
some aliens will find this video and
Yep.
they will study us.
And they're going to have a Caesar salad and just ignore
Yeah.
all the stuff because people like to gloss over the ugly and just take out what's, best, I mean, that's the way it is. And, 2,000 years later, they're on wine bottles and on salad dressing and, render to Caesar what is Caesar's and, the coins and the romance of the whole thing. And they forget how much blood was spilled, and how many bodies these people are standing on. You know what I mean? At the very least, Lincoln was trying
And
to
very
stop
proudly
it.
so, too. They're very proudly so.
Yes,
In fact, he was
yes.
bragging about it. He's like, yo, I enslaved 1 million people. I think I can get 2 million.
Mm-hmm.
That was his attitude.
I hope he's being smacked. I hope Lincoln got over there and just smacked
In
him.
fact, one of the things he would do to reward his like loyal soldiers was to give them like free slave giveaway,
Yep.
So
It's okay. Let me tell you something, Lynn. You are in good company, sweetheart. It can get heated, but not in this chat because everybody here is a gatekeeper. We enjoy the journey. We're learning from history, and we can bake some shut the fuck up cakes real quick. Our mods are fantastic, so you don't have to worry about being here, sweetie. Everybody, you can have a different opinion, and it's like a civil debate, which is unusual. You know what I mean? And everybody's allowed to say what they want to say as long as they keep it clean and they're not rude to the other people in the chat or the guests. That's our rules. It's free speech, free thought, but we all try to learn from each other too. So you're in a good place, Lynn, and welcome. Absolutely welcome. Go ahead.
here's another interesting parallel. Both known for being honest. The Honest Abe story you told the first week, right? How he got that moniker, Honest Abe.
Okay. And he didn't like that, by the way.
No.
He didn't.
But yeah, I'll tell you a quick story about how Caesar got the reputation for being honest. When he was, I think, 25 years old, he was on a boat sailing towards Greece to learn about oration.
Mhm.
Another thing that he had in common with Lincoln was he was a gifted orator and great speeches. And on the way, he got kidnapped by pirates, and the pirates, when they caught him, they demanded a ransom of 20 talents of silver. But Caesar gets insulted by this, and he scoffs at it. He's like, 20, dude, I'm worth at least 50 talents of silver, right? I mean, he was like that arrogant.
Mhm.
And so while his men go off to collect the money to pay off the ransom, he's got to stay there on the boat with those pirates for like a month. And during that month, he's like cracking jokes, giving speeches, entertaining them, like befriending them. Like he's like the life of the party. They all love this guy, right? And then when the guys are sailing back with the money, the pirates at the end, they ask him, so what are you going to do now that you've got your freedom? And then Caesar was like, well, I'm going to round up a bunch of boats and come back and get you guys and crucify all of you. And all the pirates started laughing. Oh, this guy, he's a riot. This guy's such a joker. And then he's like, bye. And then as soon as he gets back, he rounds up a bunch of boats. They catch those pirates, and he crucifies the lot of them.
Mm.
And then, so they're all strung up and crucified. But because they were buddies and because he felt bad about them as they were being crucified, he just slit their throats. He's like, see?
Well, that's nice.
And then people were like, yo, when Caesar says he's going to do something, it means he's
gonna
going to do something.
Right.
That's how he got his moniker for being honest.
Wow. It's a little different from Abe.
Very different from Abe.
Yeah. And again, I'm not 100% on if anybody heard the reason he was on the penny. Hey, Nightmare. I love Nightmare so much. A wrench the size of a Mack truck. I promise you. Nightmare comes out of nowhere and just bam, bam, bam. Everybody's we have these Black Ops mods. Like I said.
Okay,
It's
I'll give
amazing.
you one of the biggest and most significant reasons why I think they were similar.
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of their civil war, both of them had this same attitude of let them up easy.
Mm-hmm.
Let the other
Okay.
side up easy.
Okay.
And Caesar was very openly, and this is one of his biggest things, was any soldier in the Civil War, any other Roman soldiers that they captured or who surrendered, he would give them total amnesty, complete pardons, and after the war as veterans, he actually reformed. Before Caesar came into power, Rome had like about 80,000 wounded veterans who were homeless. And then Caesar saw this and he said, there's something wrong with this. These guys fight for us, they fight for Rome. And he totally reformed the entire veteran system so that they all got pensions and they all got their own pieces of land. And during
Mm-hmm.
his civil war, even the soldiers that fought against him, he gave them amnesty and he still gave them a pension because it didn't matter if they fought for him or not. They were veterans and
Right.
that's what they deserved. Right. And
Huh.
Julius Caesar was very much like about that. So when I read about Lincoln being very much for the veterans, I'm like, wow, they actually in that regard do line up. They
Huh.
really do.
Wow, that's a trip.
Yeah.
What about what Edna is saying here? Didn't all his men love him? And Glenn had something as well.
Yeah, his men were so loyal to him. They were so loyal. And he was like beloved. Um another another interesting parallel. I'm just gonna skip around here
Sure,
because
sure, sure. Can
but
you look at Glenn's though, because I
yeah.
wanted to make sure I didn't lose that, because I don't know the answer.
Okay. Well, Julius wasn't technically emperor. He was technically named dictator for life. And the word Caesar actually means cut. The legend is that he was cut from his mother's womb. That's where the word Caesarean section comes from.
Oh wow.
But now historians dispute that. Now they believe because they don't think that really happened. But that was like the legend that was associated with him. You know,
Hmm.
like George Washington cutting down the
Cutting down
cherry
the cherry
tree.
tree never
Yeah, he
happened.
had that little legend. Julius Caesar's legend was that he
Hmm.
was cut from his mother's womb, and
Hmm.
Caesar actually means to be cut from, and that's where that word comes from. But then it carried on and became a title. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, he was never a dictator. Actually, well, he was a dictator for life. Actually, technically, the first emperor was his adopted son, Octavian, who became Caesar Augustus. But
Wow. See,
where
Don,
was I?
Don's like an encyclopedia on this stuff. I'm telling you.
I
So
love to
we
see
get
this
to
is the
talking.
history that I know. This is
Yeah,
the stuff that I'm into. So,
yeah.
this is
And
not
that's
like,
why I'm so excited to take him to
yeah.
Gettysburg and teach and tell him all this stuff, because it's so exciting when you meet somebody that you can learn from, and then also share what you know too. It's so exciting, and that I think that's why I get so excited about this podcast. It's definitely not a perfect podcast. Like last night I put the beginning on at the end, and then I said screw it and just stuck the end on. I mean, like, look, I'm here about, it's me and Donnie, or it's me and Laura, or it's me and Steve, or it's just me, or me and a guest, and it's just nobody else. So, and the tech, learning all this and all the buttons and everything else, it can get really crazy. But the thing I love the most is coming in and sharing something that I'm excited about with you guys, and then Donnie comes on and he gets excited about stuff, and Steve and everybody else. So it's just this energy flow of information and anecdotes and and history and ghosts, and it's just, isn't it great? I mean, I had no idea all this stuff. Now I never really even had a thought much about Caesar, really. Never, I knew the Romans, and later on, and Roman Empire and things like that, but the details are insane, and it really is quite amazing, the parallels here in some
You really
cases.
got Roman history gets way more interesting once you start realizing that Rome is just a way more insane version of America.
Mm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I love the fact that you brought up about the founding fathers, because they actually did that. There was so much discussion,
Oh, they studied
especially,
Caesar hard. They
right,
studied Caesar
especially,
hard.
yeah, I mean, you can't really cut those guys. I mean, the way they were, we have these memories of, Samuel Adams was, kind of tried to take over his dad's brewery business, which is why the beer, and he was a terrible beer maker. I mean, the people drank it, but they complained about it all the time. He was terrible at business, but by God, rhetoric, he could speak. He was a great orator. He was a guy that anybody that was friends with him knew that he was not going to be in the back of the fight. He was going to be in the front. He was not taking your crap. They were, the British soldiers were looking for him all over, and they couldn't find him because everybody would hide him. Very much like Robin Hood type, where everybody would hide him out. And it was all because not because he was stealing from the British to give to the poor. He was trying to take back from the British their freedoms and not be taxed without representation. Sound familiar? And not have all these rules placed upon him and stuff like that. And he was a fighter, but people don't give him credit. Or Paul Revere, he was a wonderful silversmith. There are still Paul Revere silver items around throughout history, and that meant so many different things. It wasn't just that he was a great silversmith. I mean, he actually did a lot of the carvings that printed in the paper, like that famous one of the Boston Massacre, which he admits he kind of took from another artist and fixed it up and made it a little bit more surprising and a little bit more to get a rise out of people. So it's very easy to forget who these people really were, but Donnie's 100% correct. They would the lawyers and say businessmen, farmers, all of those together that were sitting in the First Continental Congress. This is exactly what they talk about. How did Rome get to be? Where did they go wrong? What was going on? And again, slavery was a huge, huge part of that discussion. As I said before, there were 2 paragraphs that were struck out very quickly when Thomas Jefferson came back from everything he had collected together and wrote down as the Declaration of Independence, because as much as they wanted to keep it in there, they knew that America was not ready to hear that, and they wanted to get on it next. And John Adams was the one who fought the most for it, that little upstart that he was obnoxious and disliked, but the little son of a bitch was smart, and he was very, very against slavery. And he knew that they knew that if it was in there, that we would never be independent. First independence, and then independence for everybody. So it kills me to read in that all men are created equal. It should say all human beings are created equal. But that's what they meant. It was not the speech of the day. Does that make sense, Donnie?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they were shooting for, and everybody should be. And that's just the way it is. And you put animals in there too, as far as I'm concerned. Go ahead, Donnie. I'm sorry.
Man,
you start
really
talking about
animals,
yeah. You start talking about the founding fathers. I could go for hours on.
I'll tell you what.
Yep.
Learning about Lincoln really struck me with one of the parallels he had. Another thing that really struck me with the parallels he had with Caesar was that when Lincoln first got into office as a lawyer. He got into office and it's on with the Civil War, and all of a sudden he's in command of a military and having to make military decisions. And this guy had no military background, and everyone was like underestimating him and saying, "Oh, this guy's going to suck. He doesn't know anything about military," right? So Lincoln, remember, Cisco, you were talking about how Lincoln had a very, he was an autodidact, right? He was a guy who taught himself. If he needed to learn something, he would get a book and he would teach himself. Yes. Julius Caesar was the exact same way.
Wow.
And he was also a lawyer. And he also, when he got command of the office, or when he got command of his army, people were like, "Yo, this is just some punk lawyer. What's he going to do with this army?" Right? And everyone was underestimating him. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, I'll show you." And then he winds up doing what he did with Europe. And so that struck me, because I was like,
parallel.
It was an interesting parallel. And there were so many. And the other big parallel that I learned through all this was with John Wilkes Booth. Because after John Wilkes Booth assassinates Lincoln, what does he expect? He expects a hero's welcome.
Yes.
Because congratulations, he saved this country from tyranny, right? And Brutus and his conspirators, when they did what they did with Julius Caesar, their motivation was, well, actually, the other conspirators had personal grudges against him because Caesar was a real big prick to the other senators. Oh boy, there are stories about that. Like, he had one guy, like, he was giving a speech in the Senate one time and a dude interrupted him, and he had like his Muscle, his bodyguards, come along with like a bucket of literal shit and dumped it on the guy's head in the middle of the Senate floor.
Wow.
Like he would do shit like that, right?
Hmm.
So, but Brutus, the guy who was like the most famous conspirator, his motivation was
Do you
that.
want the pictures of those guys up or no?
Yeah, we could do that. I totally forgot about that actually.
That's
Yeah, so
okay.
that's
I
the
just
day
want to
of
make
his.
sure.
Yeah, that's his assassination. That's another picture of his assassination.
Yeah. They all were so clean. The robes are so clean. The photographers back then were absolutely amazing.
Oh yeah.
Keep this in mind, guys, for the photographers back in this day, how long they had to hold those heavy swords above their heads so the picture wouldn't come out blurry. Think about that. And not every podcast
Think
has
of all
that
the
kind of stuff
senators.
for you
Okay,
guys.
looking at this picture,
I'm
right? Think
joking.
of all, right? These are senators, like senators,
Wow.
right? And
Right?
this guy is essentially the president for life,
They
right?
would
He's
need a
just,
lot of slaves just to keep these sheets clean. Look at this. What did they use?
oh
20
yeah,
mules
they
of
actually did use
bronze?
slaves to keep the sheets clean,
Yeah.
actually, as a matter of
Yeah.
fact.
Do you know what,
Um,
by any chance, this is not a silly question. I'm really interested. Do
yeah.
you have any idea what the material was back then? Was it a cotton thing where they'd get more like silks from the Orient? What do you have
There
any
were
idea?
there were actually porcelain was really big from the Orient. That was the thing
Okay.
that the Romans went crazy for, like inlaid porcelain stuff.
Okay.
That was the thing, and you know, spices and all that. The material for the togas. Now they wouldn't wear this every day. This is like their version of a business suit. This is
Okay.
not like what they wear around the house.
Okay.
Um, yeah,
They
and
had everyday sheets. Okay.
yeah,
I'm totally digging it. They
but I don't know. I think it
amazing
was like linen or something.
artistry and a lot of the statuary and stuff like that, you know, and the Roman columns, very popular in no offense, Italian, New Jersey and Staten Island people, but I'm just saying Roman architecture was so big. I mean, these great big columns and everything else. I mean, that, we would be amiss if we didn't mention all that because it definitely carried over.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yep.
Now the thing that struck me so hard. Okay, that's Brutus.
Okay.
That,
You want me to
that
show it?
Yeah, you can show it. That's the
Okay.
picture of Brutus. That's basically an AI rendition based off the statues, like what they think he looked like.
Mm-hmm.
This is the guy that orchestrated the assassination of Julius Caesar, along with like the numbers differ amongst historians. The general consensus is about like 20 to 30 other senators. They all took out swords and they all stabbed him like one time.
Oh my
It's
gosh.
like they lined up and they each took turns stabbing him once.
Wow. And that's
And
almost like so they wouldn't. No one person would be all the guilt and not really
yeah,
almost
because they
like
would all share the guilt, right?
right. And it was
And they did it
almost like
very
the
publicly.
firing
It was they
squad.
they made sure
Oh
everyone
wow.
was looking. Like you know how Booth did it like on stage and made it very public, right? They
Right.
made sure to make it as public as possible, and these 30 guys they would all take out. And then like Julius Caesar was just like, oh damn, I'm screwed, right? He knows
Right.
what's going on. That's why he's like, oh, you too, Brutus? I just pardoned you, you know?
E2 Brutus. Oh
Yeah, I
my
pardoned
gosh.
you.
And Brutus to him was what?
He was an officer in the opposing army during the Civil War that
Okay.
he pardoned, and to go even further, he actually gave him like an office, like a title, like a governorship, to show
Okay.
that there were no hard feelings.
And there
So
was no
that's
like
why he was so
parallel
surprised. That was
with
so
the
surprised.
position.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
That's why he was like,
there's
"What,
no
you too?"
parallel with the position of Lincoln. So he wasn't like his god of war or his,
Oh no, he
secretary.
wasn't the Stanton. No,
Nothing
no,
like that.
no.
Okay,
He
I was
wasn't the
just wondering
Stanton.
about that.
No.
Okay.
I mean,
But that's
Julius Caesar was
wild.
the god of
Did
war.
you catch what I said there? I don't know if you know this. You have to with all your military intelligence. But where are my vets in here? You know when they do a firing squad. I can't remember how many's in it. I think because in my mind it's melding together with the like the ceremony where, we do a 21 gun salute. Okay, so I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in a firing squad. I think there's 7, and only 2 or 3 actually have bullets that, that aren't blanks or whatever. And you're all aiming, and you don't know who shot the person. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Because that sounds like the Caesar thing where they all stabbed him once. Anybody?
Oh
It'll take
yeah.
them a minute for it to come up, but
So it's
I
like
wonder if
shared
they got
blame.
that
Yeah.
from there. I wonder.
Maybe. Maybe.
I don't know. It's possible.
Yeah, so but Brutus's motivation for killing Caesar was that he wanted to save the Republic.
Okay.
He was an ardent believer in the Republic, and
Hey,
he
Connor.
basically said that if Caesar was taking over this whole thing, right? If he's taking over this government, if he's named dictator for life, then what about the Republic? So he's trying to save the country, essentially, is why he did what he did to Julius Caesar. And it
Mm.
was also the fact that Julius Caesar fucked Brutus's mom, but that aside,
Oh, see, there's
yeah,
always something.
there's that.
There's always
Julius Caesar
something.
actually hooked up with like a
Mm.
lot of people's wives, and he would
Wow.
actually he slept with everybody,
I think that's what they were all
everybody's wives.
just, from the slaves on.
Yeah.
And Connor just said something really nice about you. Can you continue
Oh,
on
thank you,
for
Connie.
just a second
Yeah.
because I want to go grab some more tea. And it's
So
so hot in here, guys. I don't
yeah,
know.
go for
All
it.
the bullets are real. Okay, not all the. Okay, wait a second. I got an answer. Not. That's what I thought. Because that way, even I can't remember how far back that goes, and I think it's like really our military. I think it goes way back. It might go back to Washington even. I don't know, but did they
I
have
think
blanks
it's
back
as
then?
old as guns are old.
Yeah, but did they have blanks back then? I mean, do you know
Oh
what I'm
yeah.
saying? I'm
I guess
starting
it's
to.
as old as blanks are old then.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh. Oh, Bobby's here. Hi, Bobby. Welcome in. Welcome in. Well, go ahead. Do you have another anecdote you can tell for like a minute? I just have to run into the kitchen.
Yeah,
Sorry, guys, but I got
I
to
can
get
think of
something
a
to
couple
drink.
anecdotes.
All
I
right,
still got plenty lined up.
go ahead. Have at it, baby. I'll be right back, guys.
Yeah, so Caesar was kind of known for sleeping around a lot, and he would actually hook up with like senators' wives to get political information from them and kind of use it against people. Uh, he had this he had this thing where the soldiers, when they marched back for the triumph, which is basically like a military parade to celebrate the return of the general back to the city of Rome, and they would have like a column of like soldiers marching to the beat, and they're doing their I guess their chants. I forgot what they're called. And one of their chants that they would do like all throughout the city streets of Rome would be talking about how Julius Caesar would just sleep with all the women, and all you Romans better lock up your wives because Caesar's back in town. No woman's safe from the hypnotic powers of Caesar, I guess. This dude hooked up with everyone. So, polar opposite from Lincoln, because I don't think Lincoln was the kind of guy to do that. He seemed like a one woman kind of guy. And yeah, that was one of the things that I found very interesting was that they were similar, but then they also had their differences and huge differences, especially in personality and motivation.
I think AJK has got it right. He was a
Yeah,
slut. He was a little bit of a slut. I
but
think a lot of them were. I mean, gosh, when you look back, I don't even want to talk about it now, but these people, the way they treated human life, I don't know about. It sounds like this too, but it's just go back through, and I just don't understand why we can't learn from history and just fix it. It's like maybe. I don't know. There's got to be an answer. I'm not giving up till my last breath. And then once I'm over there, I'll be free to come back and, try to help other people and influence. I think that's what a lot of spirits do. And Donnie and I are going to get into this whole thing in probably the next or the second episode. I'm calling it the Lincoln Logs, Donnie. You get it?
yeah,
It's funny.
yeah.
It's cute. It's cute. It's childish, but I'm going for it.
I don't fully get it, but I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Well, maybe you don't know, but when I was a kid, and some people in here will remember, do you guys remember Lincoln Logs?
Oh, you mean
And
like
the
those
cute
cabin
part
things?
about it was, well, it was kind of like an
Like
early
those building
erector.
blocks?
Yeah, it was kind
Yeah,
of
I
like an
remember
early.
those. Yeah, I used to
They
play those as
came
a
in a
kid.
little
Yeah,
thing, looked like an
yeah,
oatmeal deal, and they were logs.
yeah, I remember
And
those.
and it looked like logs you would build a log cabin with, but they linked together.
Yeah,
And
Lincoln.
they named
Yeah.
them Lincoln Logs because they linked, but they log cabin Lincoln, so it was cute.
Hmm.
It was cute. But it also, in this case, these are the logs and files on Lincoln. It's just going on. Just never mind. Cisco can be crazy sometimes. But do you want another picture?
Oh yeah,
Let's
real
see.
quick.
Tell me.
I forgot to get to the point of why I brought him up.
Oh, sure.
One of his interesting parallels with Booth was that both expected to be heroes. Like Brutus expected the other senators and all of the Roman public to cheer him and be like, he saved our government. But then he actually got the opposite response,
Hmm.
which meant that he had to flee and leave Rome, just like Booth had to leave DC and then got the paper and was like, what? Everyone hates me now? What's going on here? Brutus kind of went through the same thing. So it's like when I learned about Booth and when I learned about him going through all that, I was like, dude, you're all inspired by Brutus. Didn't you learn what happened to Brutus? I mean, come on, dude. It's like he didn't learn from history. He's trying to take after this guy. And basically the same thing that happened to Booth happened to him.
Yep. Yeah, and I think like Kevin says, there's a lot that went down with Caesar that we're just not being told. But that's the way it is with all of this history, Kevin. Am I right? Donnie, we're digging
There's
up
a lot
stuff.
of stuff that's like lost to like,
Right.
history.
And that's
records.
right, and that's
Yeah.
why with with Lincoln, we got at last count, I think it was in 2020, there was over 20,000 books just on Lincoln. Just on Lincoln. Not Booth, not people that bumped into Lincoln at the train station and had a little story. Lincoln books, and then all the other stuff on top of it. You saw the tower. So in there, you have to dig and dig and dig. And just like with JFK, and that's where I learned to do it since I've been doing that for so long, you have to do the cross references. And this guy at the train station saw that guy bump into Lincoln, and Lincoln tipped his hat. And then you've got some other letter or in a diary or journal where the train conductor saw that guy bumping into Lincoln and also saw the guy see the guy. And that's what we're talking about. We get those accounts, because we all know the victors, always tell the story,
That is
but
true.
at this point in this chat, you guys know Vietnam didn't go down like they said it did. World War II didn't go down like they say it did. World War I didn't go down like they said. The Civil War didn't go down the way. We could go all the way back, bumping into Caesar, all the way back
so
to
many
the
examples
Bible.
of that. I'll give you so many examples of that.
Bible
of
and beyond.
The winner's point of view
Right.
is what? Okay, perfect example from Rome, Caligula. Everyone knows Caligula is like this weird, psycho, crazy emperor, but you could tell a lot of people who wrote his history were the people who had axe to grind against him. So.
Right. And I get a lot of my stuff on Lincoln from journals. I love to read the journals of the soldiers, especially the privates. I mean, a lot of the officers, I mean, their stuff was just kept because, they were generals or they were this or they were that or colonels, and their stuff was well kept together. It's the little journals that these young soldiers kept close to their heart and wrote in as they could, because in some cases they were given very much like Booth had, and we're going to talk about his diary or whatever, but pencils and things, even burning shit. I swear I've heard stories where they would burn sticks in the fire and use the charcoal just to write out stuff or write some type a little note home to the family. And
does that work? You can do that?
Yeah, you can do that.
Just burn a stick and then you could just use the charred remains to write
right
stuff?
But you have to keep doing it because the charcoal,
Oh.
it breaks down. So you're talking about a very loose little thing, but it might just be,
I didn't know that was a method.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, you're going back now because
Wow.
you're thinking you're around the fire. You don't have much. You got all this time because they stopped fighting at night. In most cases, because you couldn't see. You couldn't see. So they would sit around these fires and they would try to, a little at a time. And it depended on the wood you used too. There were some Southern boys who could come up with some stuff because it's just like making arrows. You can pretty much make an arrow out of anything. You can make a good arrow out of the right wood with the right method.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a hickory,
Yeah.
and you have to warm it over a fire and straighten it out. But if you didn't have the right tree, it grew the straight branches and things like that. So it's just all
Yeah.
methods. But I mean,
Yeah,
I
studying
can't.
Mongolian archery, you get to realize, that some of this stuff is real specific, real specific.
Both of my sons have longbow. They have, if anybody here knows anything about archery or anything like that, Jimmy Taylor was a fantastic bow maker. And he was controversial sitting around the powwow fire sometimes because he told long tales, but I just call them storytellers. say what you will. But anyway, Jimmy Taylor has passed now. Well, while Jimmy Taylor was alive, he had very sought after longbows, handmade, beautiful. I'll show you a picture sometime. And these are longbows. I think one has a 65 pounder, one has an 80 pounder, I believe. So basically, that's how much, to draw back and and let go. The string is all made from natural sinew. It's nothing fake. It's all natural. And they were so excited to get these. They were gifted to them, which is even more powerful. They have little mink silencers on them and stuff. So it's like a, I mean, it's just, it's an amazing thing. But they told him, okay, now we'll teach you, but you have to go make your own arrows first. So they had to learn how to do. And you know what? That's correct. What good is an empty bow if you don't know how to make an arrow? So it's like teach a man to fish, you know what I mean? Or feed a man a fish, or you teach him to fish, feed him for life, that kind of thing. You have to know how to use the things you have. But it's all about the wood, certain wood that's going to take it. Everything has a purpose, and a meaning, and I'm sure it goes all the way back. But those Southern boys knew what wood to use, and and it's not going to last long. You're going to get a couple of letters, and you have to burn it again. A couple of letters and burn it again. But they had nothing but time in the night, and they're trying to get letters out to their loved ones, and you couldn't even get, it's not like there was a post guy that came by, so they'd have to. There would be somebody to collect them all and try to send them out or whatever, or just keep them on their person, figuring if they died, they would, their loved ones would get the letter. Like that famous guy in Gettysburg, I forget his name, that actually died in Gettysburg holding a picture of his 3 children. And the children, they got the picture, and it was a big deal because somebody in the paper got it, put it in the paper in Gettysburg and some surrounding areas. And, if they called them the Orphans of Gettysburg, okay? And it finally kept going out and out and out, Southern boys, and it went out and out in all the papers because everybody's like, oh my gosh, we can't identify this man. He was holding pictures of what we assume was his children. And the mother sees the wife of the man and the mother of the children, recognizes the kids, gets a hold of, he goes to Gettysburg, whatever, goes there, and that is the person who started the Gettysburg orphanage. And she took really good care of that orphanage for several years until they had to, she had to pass it on, and that's when that woman I will not name, took over and started abusing the kids with her stick boy sidekick that used to abuse these kids and make them stand in cold water and put them in the, just the horrible things they did to the kids in that orphanage. Which is why when I go to Gettysburg, I walk across the street. I will not even go near the place. If I go near the place, I'm crossing those kids, and I don't care who gets mad. Throw me in jail. I'm taking those kids out of there. But I know some people that have already gotten quite a few of them out. So happy ending there. So there you go. Next picture, Donnie?
Sure.
Okay, what do we got? Oh! Look at these guys. It almost looks like we're getting ready for a Disney
This is what
thing.
we call the triumvirate, and I like to call this the world's first shadow government. In the middle is Julius Caesar when he's later in life. In the right, the chubby face guy, that's Pompey. He was, so when Caesar did these 3, they basically helped him go from like a lowly senator all the way up to the consulship. He went from let's say like a governor all the way up to president. Let's put this in terms of like George W. Bush, right? Julius Caesar is George W. Bush. He's the young guy, he's charismatic, goes from governor straight to the White House, right? And the guy on the right, Pompey, he's like the guy who's been in Washington for a number of decades. He knows the people to talk to. He's got all the connections. He's got the military honors. He's had consulship before, so he knows who to talk to, who owes him favors. He's kind of like the Dick Cheney, right? Except he's got like a lot of military victories and honors as well. So he's like a Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld balled into one, right? Oh my
God.
The guy on the left, that's Crassus.
Bastard.
That's Crassus. That's the wealthiest man in the world at the time. So imagine like some freaking Rockefeller dude who owns all the real estate, and this guy milked it from real estate. So this guy, he was the richest. He was the Rockefeller, of Rome. And those three together, the charismatic guy, the old guard, and the Rockefeller, they just ran it. They ran it from the shadows. Any politician that was in their way, they would, disappear them or ruin their reputation or ruin their credibility or or threaten their family. And they just broke all the rules. They just made it up. They completely just took advantage of every single loophole. Didn't even care about the laws anymore. They're like, you know what? With us three together, we're just running shit.
He's got that
shit.
scowl.
Yeah.
It shows on their faces. It really does.
And the guy on the right and Julius Caesar in the middle, they eventually had a falling out, and that was what caused the Civil War. Just these two having a falling out. That's it. That's literally it. Just these two didn't get along, so the whole nation of Rome is now in civil war because these two couldn't get along. No ideology. No ideology. There's no good of the people. It was Julius Caesar was like, oh, you want me to answer for my crimes? Well, screw you. I'm going to march on the Capitol with my army. What are you going to do? And then he was like, okay, I'm going to leave. And then he takes his army with him and ensues the Roman Civil War. You know how that Civil War ended, though? It's a really interesting story.
Nope, go ahead. Tell me, because I got no clue.
Caesar smashes this dude's army, right? This guy, runs away to Egypt. And he goes to the Pharaoh. He's like, help me, help me. Pharaoh, as soon as he sees him come off the shore, on the boat, he gets his men to come up to him. They cut off his head. And when Caesar arrives chasing after him, the Pharaoh presents his head to him as a gesture, please support me, because the Pharaoh is involved in his own civil war against his older sister, Cleopatra. And he's like, hey, you're going to take my side? I just killed your dude. Here's his head. And they said, as the story goes, when Caesar saw Pompey's head, he let out a blood-curdling scream.
Wow.
And he just broke down because he wasn't there to kill him. He was there to give him amnesty and welcome him back as a brother and because he still loved him.
Oh no!
They were boys, They were
they're boys, yeah.
And he was trying to go there to give him amnesty and listen, it's over. Just come back with me. I'll give you office. So when he saw the Pharaoh did that, he teamed up with Cleopatra and he wound up
going against the Pharaoh.
And had him overthrown, and then he had Cleopatra as the new Pharaoh, and then they started hooking
Do you
up.
see how this stuff starts, people? Just if they could have just sat down and had, a nice convo, a little, maybe watch a Little House on the Prairie or something together.
It was just because two dudes couldn't get along.
Maybe pet kittens for a while and try to work it all through. This is what happens. Empires have civil wars, and bam.
Yeah.
Wow.
To be fair though, this civil war wasn't all that bloody because again, Caesar was actually very cool,
Susan.
with the opposing side, giving them amnesty, showing them mercy. So there wasn't really that much blood. This wasn't the worst civil war by any means. But it was right after he wins the Civil War, 5 years later, he gets assassinated the same way. Not the same way as Lincoln does, but the fact that Lincoln also was betrayed by members of his own government, which Cisco and I agree upon. Right?
Yeah, I do. And the more I dig, the more I agree.
It's just the same way all those senators turned on Caesar. I feel like that's very reminiscent of the way people just turned on Lincoln.
It's always about power and money and control and
some of them thought they were doing the right thing. Some of them legitimately thought they were saving the country. Right?
This is, aliens. That's right, Melissa. Melissa says this is why aliens don't contact them. It's true. Or maybe that's why they are. You know what I mean? Again, that's a whole nother can of worms, open that can of worms everywhere. But
the guy on the left is the guy responsible for killing Spartacus, by the way. That's the guy that caught Spartacus in the end.
Is he? Well,
that's Spartacus was like John Brown, how we mentioned John Brown was inspired by Spartacus.
Yes.
The guy who brought Spartacus in the end to get crucified was the guy on the left, Crassus, the Rockefeller.
And the Pharaoh got his head.
No, the Pharaoh got the other guy on the right, the chubby guy.
Oh, okay.
No, the guy on the left, he died in Asia. Actually, he tried to bring an army against this Asian army, and the Asian army just wiped them all out, and he died.
Yeah, He got handed his ass.
He got handed his ass.
Wow. All right. I think you got another picture here. That's amazing, Donnie. Okay,
Okay, so this is the last
tripped
thing I
me out.
gotta say.
This is tripped me
So I
out.
found this cool little website that basically took old statues of like ancient Romans, and then they scanned it and they used AI and computer graphics to recreate what they would look like if they were alive today as like politicians today. And this is what it got from Julius Caesar. Now, Julius Caesar in this picture looks way younger than his statues, because here's another interesting parallel. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated when he was 56 years old. Julius Caesar was assassinated when he was just a couple months shy of his 56th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
So they were assassinated around the same age. This is Julius Caesar when he's probably like in his 30s or 20s.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He looks like he belonged on a soap opera or something.
He
He
looks
like
like
that
an
guy
investment banker,
that's
right?
going to screw everybody,
Yeah,
behind their back.
He looks like a Wall Street guy that would just screw over, doesn't care who he screws over.
Yeah,
He's gonna make as much
absolutely.
money as he can.
Absolutely. And he's married to that woman that changes her clothes 5 times during
Yeah,
the same day
yeah.
and just walks around and goes from the,
And he's like doing coke in the bathroom and stuff.
to
He's
the
like that dude.
hospital, to the hotel to have lunch and all this, and just causing all this trouble.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, he's got a mistress behind,
Probably has some like outlandish supercar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
he
the
looks
next
like
one?
trouble. The next one's gonna trip you guys out. Are you ready? It blew my mind. This is so crazy. All right, here we go.
And this is Lincoln. They did the same thing with Lincoln with his paintings and his busts, and they AI'd and CGI'd it. And this is what Lincoln would look like if he were an American politician today.
How about that? How about that?
Yeah.
I mean, you can see it.
You can
but
definitely see it.
It trips me out, though. I mean, it really does. Anytime you see someone that you're used to seeing still in old pictures and things like that, to bring that life to them. But, it wasn't that long ago, guys. I mean, we're talking about Caesar that was, again, 60 BC, you said?
Oh, no, he died in 44 BC.
Okay. So, again,
March
up with
15th,
dates.
44 BC, actually. March
Wow.
15th.
Wow.
And then Lincoln's April 15th.
Right. And I forgot to tell you last night, I don't know if it's anything, but it's just just throw it in the box of coincidences and whatnots, that Junius Brutus, she can't make this shit up, people. Junius Brutus Booth, the father of John Wilkes Booth and Edwin Booth and all the other little Booths, he died at 56. And it's like I'm reading up on all these things, and I'm going, wait, 56, April 14th. And this one died at 50, April 14th. And I'm like, what?
Jeanette Sanchez says it's Uncle Sam. He does look like Uncle Sam.
He does a little, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I love the pin on the lapel.
You know what's a good detail about this picture I like, actually, is the fact that he doesn't look quite as wrinkled or withered as his normal pictures. Because if he was alive today, he wouldn't have gone through nearly that kind of stress.
Right. That's the big deal,
Yeah.
man. When you see the 4 years from when he took office in 60 to basically 65, 65, 4 years, and the difference between them. I have that in one of the videos. It'll wreck your heart, man, when you see what, Lincoln went through. And anybody that ever tells me that he doesn't care, or he was this, or he was that, again, this goes all the way back to when he started just writing letters before he ever ran for senator, just to go all the way back to, writing letters when he was working in the little general store and stuff like that. The way he was, he just wasn't that way. Keep in mind, people, he got out of a carriage. He was going to an important meeting, did not care, got out of a carriage because he heard baby birds in the thicket, and went and picked up these baby birds and walked around looking for the nest to put them back in the nest. And as he stated it, I put them back in the home their mother built for them. This was Lincoln. So anybody that thinks that he was just frivolous and making up things to get along, he wasn't about the power. He was about the change. He was about, what can I do with this short life? And that absolutely amazing, Donnie. I mean, I had no idea of most of this, and I'm glad you brought that kind of to life for us. The parallels.
That's what makes history to me most interesting, is not so much learning things in the bubble, but then like trying to compare and contrast and like see all the differences and seeing how interesting and that's neat.
Yeah.
Even the differences are like, oh, that's so different. That's neat too.
Yeah. And also the society of human beings. You wonder, is there an inherent thing in a human being? Like, what I mean by this is, Jeff Sharer called it killer angels and your better angels. And in one of Lincoln's speech, he actually brought up the better angels part, which is where Jeff Sharer got it from. And what he meant was, as he explained it, was basically that divine spark, that connection, and that moral compass. So you wonder if somebody grew up in a situation where they were never shown love, where they were never shown kindness. Can that person grow up and know that that's wrong, that there's more? That there is a kindness. And I think
Yeah.
it's true. I think they can. I think they can. Like that one quote that I'm very fond of. And it's so powerful, and I think about it all the time, especially with bad stuff happening and stuff. It says, and I'm going to possibly paraphrase, I think I know it verbatim, but I'm going to give it a shot. It's, I believe in the sun even when it does not shine. I believe in love even if it is not shown, and I believe in God even when he does not speak. Powerful words.
Yes.
Even more powerful when you understand that a soldier in World War II found that written on a dungeon wall in Auschwitz. He even found the rock that a skeletal hand must have reached up and used the last breath in their body to put that on, to confirm that he still believed in the sun even though he was in a dungeon and could not see it, that he believed in love if he was not shown it, and he believed in God even when he did not speak. In this hopeless situation, yet still there's hope, which is when I brought up Han. And Donnie was in the chat, and I had always believed that Han was a Korean word for basically a person that felt so broken and so sad, and that tears would not come, yet still there's hope. And that I always kind of combine those two together because we've all been in those spots. So remember that little poem, that if that person could have that kind of faith and that kind of conviction, how can we not? We can get through this. We can get through anything, and we can certainly get through it together, right? So there you go. Donnie,
Yeah.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So you want to talk about some harlots?
Oh yeah, we could do that. But before we go there,
Sure.
I really need to smoke.
Go
like,
smoke a
real
cigarette.
bad.
What I'm
All that
gonna do-
Caesar talk made me really crave nicotine.
He
So
really wanted a
I'll
salad.
be on the phone. Don't worry, guys.
Okay,
I'll still
sweetie.
be here. I'll be back in a couple minutes.
All right. So, harlots, yeah. So we're gonna go back to these guys here. Now again, I realized last night what I was misunderstanding. I think one of you guys told me you could see the arrow, but there was an arrow in the picture, and I thought you could see my little pointer arrow, and you couldn't. So I'm going to give it to you on times. Again, these are the conspirators. Now there was 9 people that after Lincoln was assassinated, that's when everything started to shut down. Okay. When he got shot, we talked about last night how Laura Keene and that Lincoln bled on the dress. According to the doctors that were there, now they did remove the blood clot from the back of his head, and that released some of the pressure, so his breathing started up again and his pulse started to get a little bit stronger. That was really the only thing that gave him that extra time. He was shot, I think, around 10:14. I could be off on that, but he died at 7:22 a.m. the next morning of April 15th. And once they carried him out, they took him across the street. They really didn't know what to do. So if you remember the documentary where Laura Keene, the actress that was portraying her, was saying nobody knew what to do. Somebody said over here, and that's exactly what happened. A young man had just rented the room across the street, saw what was going on, and said, bring him here. They were just looking, they knew they were going to make it to the White House, even though it wasn't very far away. So they take him across to this, and it was not a boarding house. It was just a guy who had a place. He was a tailor, and his name was Peterson, and he had a couple extra rooms. And around that time, people, rented or had, kind of roommates, what it would be like today, So he's in this room. They laid him out, and there was at least 3 or 4 doctors there at the time, and one of the doctors, I cannot remember if it was Leo or the other one, I can't remember his name, I don't want to get it wrong, held his hand. Once they realized the wound is mortal, I mean, he's not going to make it, it's just a matter of time. They laid him on this bed, and he was almost too long, because he was 6'4", to fit on this bed, so he was diagonal. They made him comfortable, but they did, all the doctors stripped him naked and covered him with this quilt. And they were doing things like mustard plasters and hot water bottles to try to keep his extremities warm, because he was getting very cold, of course. There was nothing they could do. They wanted to see if there was any other wounds, and this is why they examined him this way. Now, at the time, they took the clothes, and Stanton wanted the clothes, so basically they could search him. Stanton sets up a room like right across from this room. They just, commandeered it, and right away Stanton gets to work. He wants everybody to come in. He's interrogating people, what did you see? And it all started out with the people that were there in the balcony with the president, and then he worked his way through the actors and people that worked at the theater, to the point where Stanton, just days following the assassination of Lincoln, actually had the actors reenact the entire play, and it kept making them stop so they could do all these measurements, because
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was trying to prove that Spangler, which is this man, let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, very bottom. Okay, Spangler is at 9 o'clock, right under Mary Surratt. Okay, I think, or is that Arnold?
No,
It's
that's
just
Harold.
like Arnold.
No,
Is that
Spangler's
Harold?
at 6 o'clock.
6
He's,
o'clock,
yeah,
100%.
he's at the very bottom on the
I got
right.
this slide thing right in front of him. Thank
Yeah.
you, Donnie. So Spangler actually was the one that we think held the horse. There's another account that said the kid held a horse, or he got the horse. Something to do with the horse. We've heard that he hit the guy when he came out and all this other stuff. Not 100% sure on Spangler. However, he was involved to a small degree, not compared to these other people. Spangler was the one in charge of the scenery, so Stanton was really ripping apart these actors and actresses, because he said that the scenery was so far apart at stage right, where Booth ran out of after he jumped over, and that whole Sixth Semper Tyrannis, and the South is, I've done it, the South is avenged.
Yeah.
He goes out that door. This is what Stanton was doing. He was measuring to see if it was for the hoop skirts that went through, or they were giving Booth more room. This is how detailed they were getting. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, Stanton knew they were looking for Booth. Everybody knew Booth. Everybody in the audience said it was Booth, right?
Yeah.
Stanton would not release the name for the posters. Remember, we looked at the posters, and it was
It
3
goes
days.
deeper than that, Cisco.
Oh, you bet
It actually
does.
goes deeper. I actually read this recently.
Tell us.
One of the other things that Stanton did was, well, people knew which way Booth was going to go. Like, it wasn't hard to figure out where his destination was going to be. It was either going to be to the train station or to Richmond, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he dispatched soldiers to the train station, and then he dispatched his soldiers to all over the place, like Pennsylvania, New York, just like in every which way direction, when it was pretty obvious he wasn't going to even go there.
Right.
So they were like, so the author was like, why was he sending all these soldiers in these all these random directions when he knew it was Booth, and he knew because it was Booth which way he was going to be going, and that was the one way that he didn't have anyone cover for a good while.
100% true.
And then he just crosses the bridge all willy-nilly.
Mm-hmm.
He gets permission, and then some other guy testifies who tries to go like 5 minutes after, and then he gets denied. Now this is the guy we need to talk about, Cisco, isn't it?
Yep, it is. And
Yep.
now this is not a colorized picture of him here on the left. This is an actor from an early movie, but I'm not sure about the one on the right.
But
This
it
is
sure
definitely
looks like
Stanton
him.
here. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, yeah. Some of these people really, really, there's
I think
one. I think Johnson looks a lot like. Oh gosh, what's his name? Oh shoot, it's an actor. I love him. So if you guys know anything bad about him, I don't want to know because I only have a few actors left that I can watch a movie with. Tommy Lee Jones.
we
I
need to
think
talk a bit
Johnson
about.
looks a lot like Tommy Lee Jones. I really do. But Tommy Lee Jones played Stevens in the Lincoln thing. So you go ahead if you want to talk about Stanton. Again, we'll go over what we've already said about
Yeah.
Stanton, and that was the fact that Lincoln called him his old the God of War. Okay,
Yep.
he said, I cannot do this without him because he was the one in charge of like the military and everything that was going on to come back and report. Lincoln would sit in the telegraph office all day trying to get news. He was probably there. It was like the early, telephone lines, whatever. It was all not ticker tape. What do you call it? Morse code kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Telegraph office.
Yeah.
So he needed him, even though as he went, he was educating himself on military maneuvers and everything else. Went through McClellan,
Thinking the same thing,
which was
Melissa
a
Nicole.
shit. Little Napoleon,
Yeah.
yeah. Ugh.
Um,
But he talked dirty shit about
oh yeah,
Lincoln.
he talked all the sorts of crap about
Called
Lincoln.
him a gorilla, called him an ape, said he was sick of these anecdotes and these funny stories. When Lincoln, that was his way to stay out of depression and to also make a point.
And he would just flat out like
Yes.
disobey orders. Like
Yes.
if Lincoln told him to do something, this guy would just be straight up like, nah, I'm not gonna
Mm-hmm.
do that. And then Lincoln would be like, well, okay. I'm like,
Yup.
come on, man, you're the president. You're his boss.
Right. He's the one that in the documentary, and again, this is backed up in a lot of different journals and things like that. You're going to hear Lincolnians and historians and scholars tell you direct opposites about Stanton. I had two or three that I just couldn't understand where they were getting it from, where he said Stanton loved Lincoln, they were best friends, and I'm like, where in the hell are you getting this from?
No.
But again, don't be thrown by that. Go back, look at the stuff that Lincoln was writing, look at the stuff that Stanton was writing about Lincoln, what other people said Stanton was saying, and it was quite there was a lot of animosity there. However, Lincoln surrounded him with these people, and everybody thought he was very smart to do it.
He was from the previous
For the
administration, and then Lincoln was just like, oh, he's really good at his job, and
So
basically
that's why
it.
he picked
Yeah.
them, and he just tried to move past all the insults and everything else and just continued to do it his way. Lincoln reminds me of the chipmunk in my backyard. I have several, but I've got one that's a real doozy.
Okay.
And while everybody in the yard is arguing and fighting over things, he's just going in and out, and he knows where he wants to go. Nothing is bothering him. He's not afraid of the big ducks making all the noise. He's not afraid of the geese over here or even the cat that's sitting in the corner. He's just going about his business and getting it done and collecting his nuts and putting stuff up for a rainy day. And he couldn't care less about what everybody else is doing. He's just being a chipmunk. Lincoln was doing what he wanted to do all through all this madness, past Mary, past his kids dying, past jerks like this in his cabinet, past Chase the whole time. He was, I forget what his title was at this point, it doesn't matter, but he was right there in the cabinet, and his daughter is fighting for Chase to become president. Seward went in like that he figured that, he's actually giving letters to Lincoln. So was McClellan, by the way, of this is what you should be doing as president. And if I was president, this is what I'd be doing. And he felt like he was more suited for the position. So even though he lost to Lincoln, he was still campaigning to be president to the president. He turned in his resignation 4 or 5 times. And the last
You're talking
time,
about Stanton, right?
this is Chase.
Yeah. Oh, Chase.
No, this is Chase. Yeah,
Okay.
Stanton, not Stanton. Seward came around. He's the one who gave Lincoln the kittens. I'm just telling
Yeah.
what other before you get into Stanton. So then there's Chase. His daughter is campaigning, actually had a pamphlet made up about what a great president Chase would be. And somebody comes and shows it to Lincoln. Lincoln looks at it and says, they're going to do what they're going to do. I have to continue doing my day. He's just going to keep collecting the nuts and putting up for the day because he knows
I
what's
think I
coming.
recall that story actually.
Yeah.
I think I came
And
across that.
he finally turned in, he said, well, I've had enough of this. And he says, look, I wasn't a part of this. It's my family and supporters. They put this out. And he says, I need you concentrating on what's going on now. We have Americans, and well, I didn't say Americans. He said we have young men dying in the fields, and you're campaigning for for a presidency of a country that may not even exist. I need your head in the game. And he said, well, then I'll turn in my resignation. And Lincoln says to him, how many times have you turned in your resignation to me? And he said, I believe 4. And he said, well, it's about time I accepted one. Boop. Later. Best thing he ever did. But I wish he had gotten rid of this jerk. This is the one that Baker gave Booth's diary to after
Actually,
he
can
read
I
it.
backtrack a bit on
Yes.
Stanton before we go there?
Please do.
Okay,
Go ahead.
real quick. I think people need to realize the reason why Stanton is such an interesting figure and such a pivotal figure in this whole conspiracy theory is because, number one, he had a motive, right?
Oh, yeah.
He had a motive in that he had the most to gain with Lincoln being out of the way, right? Because Stanton's whole point of view of what they should do with the South was not what Lincoln wanted to do. What he wanted to do with the South, and keep in mind, he hated the South, right? He was not sympathetic to the South at all. And he just wanted to like milk them and carpet bag them and just kind of punish them, really. If you see like his attitude, like he seemed a bit like, man, screw them. Let's dick them over. And that's what he wanted to do, right? That was the kind of guy he was.
Right.
And so he was just an outright dick to Lincoln, right? And he had them, he didn't seem to really care all that much after Lincoln got assassinated. He didn't really, the telegram wires magically stopped working that night. And he sends all the troops in all the wrong directions. Right, he's dragging his ass, like explaining that it's Booth, and he's also representing all these big money interests that want to go right into the South and just start carpetbagging like the whole place and just milking the people and just profiting off it. And he was representing those interests. He had every motive and every desire to see Lincoln out of the way.
100%. Ignore this just real quick, but when the internet went out, it knocked something off I wanted to show you guys, so I'm going to load it, and I didn't want to cut off Donnie. I think that'll work. Wait a second. I'll take it down till we're ready. Okay, go ahead. I just wanted to make sure we had that. Go ahead, Donnie.
So yeah, that's why I feel like Edwin Stanton is probably the guy who may have either known about it, or if he found out about it, he didn't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm. And Donnie and I are really, I don't have all the details yet, and I want to give Donnie a chance because what's happened is we were supposed to do this either the Sunday we come back from Gettysburg or the weekend after, but Donnie shifted everything up with Caesar and everything, so you guys would have a show tonight because we knew we found out like yesterday afternoon that Steve wasn't still feeling good and couldn't probably do the show, so it was Donnie's idea to bring all this up.
Switch course.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's not completed the book that he's reading yet, so we kind of wanted to wait on what happened to Booth at the tobacco barn, what happened with, was it Booth, was it somebody else, was it, all this other stuff that's coming up. There's so much left here, guys, and again, Donnie and I talked about it, said, well, maybe there's too much Lincoln, but it's not really all just Lincoln. This is so much stuff all the way through, and it really has so much to do. I personally believe, at least it still has significance today. And again, you know how I feel about learning from history and trying to remember, because that's what's powered me through so much crap over the past 30, 40 years. So that's what we're doing, so if we're jumping back and forth, it's because I'm reading another book and doing documentaries and digging that way. Donnie's reading, and I don't want to rush him to the end, so we're jumping over to here. But Stanton, again, that was the person that Baker read the diary. He turned it into Stanton.
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
And when he gave it to
Real
him,
shady.
right, and he locked it in a safe and held it there for 2 years. And when Congress finally called, for the evidence and said, "Give it to us," there was 18 pages missing, very much like the 18 minutes on Nixon's tapes, right? So I mean, it's just a coincidence. It's crazy, but and on the Johnson Hoover conversation, I mean, just it's so much stuff. But that's why we wanted to bring in Stanton, and Donnie found out some really crazy shit, and I think go ahead, tell him.
Well,
Whatever you
the
want to tell
more
about
you read
Stanton.
about Stanton's life, you start to realize that this guy was a freaking nut job. Okay. So I don't know the details about too much about the Johnson administration afterwards, but I do know at one point Johnson was being impeached, and I think Stanton was behind that because
Hmm.
they clashed because
Hmm.
Johnson was actually trying to enact a lot of Lincoln's like policy ideas, and
Hmm.
Stanton was the guy that was in his way, and they would clash. And I think Stanton tried to get him impeached, and then Johnson basically fired him, right? And
Hmm.
when they tried to remove him from his office, he had his office door barricaded, and he
Hmm.
did that twice, I think.
Yes, he did.
This guy was a
He
freaking nut
with
job. He's
furniture.
like,
He
the president
barricaded.
fires you, and he's like, no, I ain't leaving. I'm barricading the door. I'm staying right here in my job. I was like, what
This
kind of dude is
asshole.
this?
He's
This guy's a
fired.
freaking
He's
weirdo.
out of there. He barricades himself in the office with furniture, and Johnson's beating on the door and hollering for help to get him out of there. He didn't do it just once, he did it twice. Melissa, I don't know what you mean, honey. The Lincoln ghost thing. If you have that, can you DM me that? Do you have that video, or can you pop it up here, or
Oh,
I
the
don't know which one.
Gettysburg residual ghost. I think that was the one with
Is it the
the.
one where they're walking and they're kind
I
of like
think
crawling
so.
behind the?
Yeah, I think,
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, I love that one. Yeah. And there's so many
Um,
again. There's so many assholes out there that go, okay, well they're
That
just
ain't even
repeating.
that ain't even the creepiest Stanton
No,
story. That
no,
ain't even the creepiest. So
no. The Stanton
Stanton,
was a trip.
so Stanton was like in love with like this 18-year-old girl while
Ted,
he's
thank
still
you
like
so
a.
much. God bless you. Look, Ted. Look what Ted said. Look.
Oh, thank you, Ted.
Thank you so much,
20
Ted.
pounds. Is that
Thank
pounds?
you,
I think
thank
that's
you so much.
pounds.
Yep, that's going to go to book. That's going to go to Books for Future Shows and StreamYard, 100%.
Thank
Because
you.
we always like to take that and put it right back in, so we can bring you another great show. And Barnes and Noble isn't cheap, and I don't really. I like to look at I love the smell of a new book.
Yeah, it's not
So
cheap.
some of them I don't like to order online. I like to go and look at them a little bit, see if it's what I really want. And thank you, thank you, thank you
There
so
was
much.
one book on Amityville I was thinking about buying, and I looked it up online. It was like $90. I was like, God damn.
Yeah, some things are just amazing, and
Yeah.
especially old Lincoln. Any books like that, or JFK books. Some of the older books are the ones that have the truth in them, like the ones that were done around 67 and first print, because after first print they ripped out the truth.
Yeah.
So if you can get, and they're expensive. So thank you guys so
So
much.
so Stanton was like really into this one like 18-year-old girl. I don't remember,
Here
like
it
he was
comes, guys.
older, and
Yeah,
unfortunately I think that girl died from some disease,
right.
and Stanton was pretty torn up about it. So he actually had her body dug up, and he took her body home. And who knows what he
Let
did with
that
that
sink in.
body.
Let that
He
sink in.
also lost a 2-year-old son later on in life, and he had his body dug up. He took the coffin and everything and put the coffin in the baby's cradle and left it there. Apparently, I think people kind of did that back then.
Well, I don't think people did that. What you're probably thinking of is
Yeah.
there used to be a photography. I don't know if you guys see this, but this is the most
Oh, it was like
hideous.
Memento Morte or something like that. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
very well done. Yes, very good. And the photographer and the coroner or mortician, whatever you want to call it, would work together so that the person was sitting up and the whole family would get around him, and that would be like their last picture with the loved one. But they'd
yeah.
bury them afterwards. They didn't keep them, you
And they
know.
make him look super lifelike too. It's weird.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
But he kept that child in that cradle in
yeah,
his home for over 2 years.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know, this guy
This
now
guy was
that
a weirdo.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Oh, Susan saying, don't rush, don't worry about jumping back and forth. The way you're presenting this is totally enjoyable. Oh, thank you. And all the mistakes in between. But you know what? We're trying to bring you the facts. We're so
Hmm.
not perfect, but we're trying to bring you the facts as we learn. Yeah, necrophilia. I don't
Yeah.
know. It reminds me, you guys remember that story of that doctor that went and dug up his bride and kept her forever, and he was like, oh,
And
and he
this guy
was
was the guy that was running our nation's military, by the way, folks.
this is what we're saying. How crazy. And
Yeah.
Lincoln was
The military
just
answered to him, not Lincoln. To him.
so kind and I mean he could be ruthless. Tell him about the riots. We want to tell you the stuff that's
The
controversial
draft
about Lincoln.
riots? Oh,
The
okay.
draft riots. Now, do you guys know about the draft riots?
So I think some people know about the draft riots, right?
Give them what you know, and then I'll
I don't remember the exact details, but I guess
I don't have
people
the
in New
dates
York
written
City,
down.
I think Irish immigrants were rioting because eventually got to the point where for the war that the Union needed soldiers and bodies, so they reinstituted the draft, and they were drafting Irish immigrants who had like no concept of like why they were even fighting in the first place.
Right.
So they started rioting, and they
Fresh
started
out of
blaming
Ellis Island, a lot
they
of
started blaming black people, as a matter of fact, and started like hanging them in the streets
Yes.
and
It was
like
a
burning down their
horrible,
homes.
horrible
And
riot.
then and then hold on.
Let me say this
Wait,
part. You get a
yeah.
drink of water.
No, I'm good.
You good?
Yeah.
There was over 120 people killed over a short amount of time. They're burning down buildings. They burnt down
Yeah.
an all-black orphanage. Now the police and anybody that tried to help these people, they were hanging them from the light posts. They were setting these people on fire. Men, women, children. Didn't matter. They lost their freaking minds. And
Yeah.
anybody that tried to help them, they killed them too.
Yeah.
Because the Irish were saying, and nothing against the Irish, we all have history, trust me. I don't mean that against, I'm just talking about the people of the time.
Mhm.
They said if you were going to give them citizenship, that's what kicked it off, because the scuttlebutt was coming out that the Union soldiers were starting to fill up with freed black men and men that came across, they weren't really free, they were escaped, and joined the military. So Lincoln is pacing back and forth, and they're telling him that once this is all over, he has to turn them back. And he's arguing with Stanton, and I believe Chase was still there. And, there's a couple other people, and they're all trying to. So he says, there's no way I could do that. He said, if I did that, these honorable men who have put on a uniform and fought gallantly for their freedom and for the Union, I would be cursed in this life and the next if I did that. I would be damned for all eternity. And that's what Lincoln said. He said, there's no way I'm doing that. So he would have no problem fighting his entire cabinet, every general in the room. But he also was the same man that when McClellan, who was the first general of the Union Army, placed there because of his reputation in the Mexican War. And he
George
was beloved.
McClellan, yes.
Yeah, George
Yes.
McClellan. He was beloved by all his men. He put all of his chosen generals, in command and all of that, surrounded by all this love. And he was like
like
the
a
little
West Point
Napoleon.
guy. Yeah.
This son of a bitch didn't even believe in preserving the Union.
No, he didn't.
He's the head of the Union Army.
No,
he didn't
didn't.
believe in the emancipation. He didn't believe in freeing slaves. All he wanted to do was hold the army long enough for the Confederacy to win, and he was hoping they could do it without a shot. I mean, that's my thoughts. And
He was
that's
just
a
trying
lot
to
of
keep his
scholars.
position and move up to another position. That's all he was
Yes,
trying to
he
do.
wanted to be president.
He didn't give a damn. He didn't give a damn about slavery. You could tell.
They all
You
wanted
could
to
tell
be
by his
president.
actions.
And
Yeah.
this son of a bitch would avoid Lincoln. You could tell by my temperament just talking about it. There's no way I should be in any kind of position, because I would have had this guy, I don't even know. I don't even want to say. But he would avoid Lincoln if Lincoln came to see him, which is why Lincoln went twice to the battlefield to sit in that tent. That's why I pull up that picture. But he went to his home to talk to him, because he's taking all this time now. in McClellan's defense, he did organize the soldiers and, got everybody ready, but he's like, okay, well, it's been 2 years. Are they ready yet? He'd say, well, the horses are tired. And he said, he wrote in his hand, he said, can you tell me from what exhaustion the horses are tired? They haven't moved in a year and a half. I mean, this is the kind of shit with your
Well,
union in
he
charge.
seemed really pissed off at the fact that the Civil War was happening at all. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of the reason for his reticence was the fact that he didn't want to fire upon fellow soldiers in his mind. He's like, why are we even fighting? He's like, this is totally dumb, but he can't not fight because he still wants his position. That's
They called him
basically
Little
the story of
Napoleon.
George
They
McClellan.
called him something else too, Little Clem or some weird
He
Little
just
Mac.
wouldn't
Little
fight.
Mac.
He just
Little
wouldn't
Mac.
fight.
Yeah, and it's not that he didn't know how. He didn't want to.
He
If
just
you
didn't
if
want
he
to.
kept holding it back, and he would send
He
letters
thought
to
like the
Lincoln.
war was completely stupid and ridiculous, and then
Right.
he would look at Lincoln with such utter disgust because he's like, "You're making me fire upon fellow American soldiers?
Yeah.
Who are you?
What a trip. But
Who
Lincoln
is
was
this
kind
guy?"
of stuck because he
Yeah.
said, if I pull him out, then we have all this morale issue, and all the generals he picked are in charge. So Lincoln actually tried to kind of move the army out from underneath of him. And the reason he did that is he went to his McClellan's house to speak to him, and he's waiting there with his aides. And McClellan comes in, and the butler tells him, that Lincoln, the president, is in the parlor, and he looks into the parlor and walks right up the stairs and goes to bed, and then sends the butler down to tell them, the general would like me to tell you that he has gone to bed. And you know what Lincoln did? He got up, brushed off his hat, and walked out the door quietly. That was Lincoln. And then he started to move the army out from under McClellan, slowly but surely, and eventually he had to replace him. He got Burnside, and then he got, there was another one. I'm missing a general. Anybody throw a name at me? The second one he got, I think it was Burnside, and then there was it Hood? I can't remember the second one. But then it was Meade. By the time they got to Gettysburg, it was Meade. And you've heard me discuss it, how brokenhearted he was, because at Gettysburg, by the end of the third day, after Pickett's charge, that was pretty much it. The sun had gone down on the Confederacy that day. Not that they didn't fight gallantly. They did. They actually was pushing and pulling the first 2 days. But, because of Buford and a couple of other ones, and Heath and Reynolds, they held the high ground before, everything converged. And that was really, the placement. If you watch the movie Gettysburg, it was played by Sam Elliott. So watch it because it was played by Sam Elliott. And he does this wonderful speech where he's talking to his aides, and they're waiting for Reynolds to come up and give him
I
reinforcements.
forgot about that, Glenn Dennison. Thanks for bringing that up. McClellan was the chief civil engineer. He did have an engineering background for the Illinois Central Railroad.
That's
and
true.
Lincoln was the company's attorney. Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember. And
Yeah.
and I believe that it was like the CEO
Right
of that
on, Glenn.
railroad company was the one who came up with the slogan "Honest Abe." I think he was the guy that actually, because I think he helped with his campaign. So like
So wild, isn't
the
it?
rail splitter stuff and the Honest Abe, I think was the head of that Illinois Central Railroad.
It's incredible. It really is.
Yeah, I did forget that McClellan was a civil engineer. Wound up becoming governor of New Jersey, but not before running against Lincoln for the Confederate side after he
And
got
lost.
fired.
And lost.
But yeah, he
lost.
actually almost beat him.
Yeah. But he lost.
Yeah.
He lost. But and the thing was, when Meade got put in, he only had 3 days in that position before Gettysburg hit. So Meade was like, what's going down, and he kind of looked like a little bit like a Popeye turtle. But the reason, and I'm going to show you a video next Sunday a little bit about that, but that was the only time anybody ever saw Lincoln cry. His son Robert was in from college, had just joined, with Grant and everything. He was 20, right around when Edmund pulled him out from the train situation, saved his life. But he came back, and when he walked in the room, it was right after Gettysburg, and Lincoln was sitting at his desk with his head on his desk, weeping in frustration and anguish. And he says this line, We had them in the palm of our hand. All we had to do was close our fingers and the war would be over. Now the death will continue on. It wasn't so much that he wanted to win, it was the fact that he knew it would drudge on. Why? Because Meade let Lee take his army across the Potomac. It's raining.
Yeah.
There's like 11 miles. I mean, I wrote it in the book. I'll pull it out. Of just wounded carriages going across. At any point, they could have stopped that or blocked it, and Meade let him go. And in Meade's defense, everybody was spent. This was a hard 3 days in Gettysburg. He felt like he didn't have the men to do it, and he just said, it's been a good fight. Let him go. Let him heal up. Well, what kind of sense is that? Can you imagine Patton doing that? I'm just saying.
All I'm saying is, if that had been Julius Caesar in that position,
Yeah.
he would have had Meade executed. He would have had his head chopped off for that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, but Lincoln didn't. He just
Yeah,
he
he
wanted
wasn't
to
in
know-
that position.
He
I
was
bet he kind of wish he
heartbroken.
did though.
He was heartbroken because he knew the death would continue, and it did for almost 2 more years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. That was like Gettysburg was the middle of the war. It wasn't even like the end.
Yeah. And a lot of times people say it was a watershed moment. It was a high point. I'm going to have a video and a little bit of information more about that. Again, I know we're skipping around like crazy, but I wanted to show you this because Donnie.
Real quick,
Go ahead.
before we go into that, are we gonna move off from Stanton? Because I do have one last
No,
thing to
please
say
tell.
about him.
I'm sorry, I got you off.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no, it's fine.
Talk
It's
about
fine.
Stanton.
I just remembered it.
He's such a
Stanton
bastard, Stanton. I'm sorry.
Stanton does deserve credit for one thing, though.
Okay.
And the one thing was he was instrumental in winning the Civil War for the Union. He was. Like, he kind of did win the war for him. Because a lot of what
I like
the
to
key
think
to
the
the
soldiers
Union's
did.
victory was also the fact that they had superior logistics and access to supplies and resources. And Stanton's talent was that he made sure the resources went to the right place. And basically, the reason why the Confederacy failed was not because they lost any major battle, mostly was because
They won more.
were running out. They won more battles than they lost, but they were running out of resources and they couldn't keep it up, but the Union could. And so even though they were like losing more often, but they could still maintain the war, the South couldn't. And so when Lee finally surrendered, that was the death knell because they didn't have the resources to fund the war. They knew they didn't have the resources or
Right.
the manpower.
It was
to fund the
done
war. It was
then,
a foregone conclusion at that point.
Even though the battles went on and there were
Yeah.
some skirmishes and some things and all that stuff.
So Stanton
done
did
when
kind of
Richmond
win the
fell.
war for Lincoln. Like, he deserves just as much credit as Grant did too,
And
you know?
again, I wish it never happened, and I'll say it again. When I go on the battlefield, I don't ask these ghosts, or what side of the war did you fight? I give a shit. They're all soldiers. These are Americans. I look at it like Lincoln did. They're all, our brothers and sisters. Let them up easy. And that, I stated, I think that's what got him killed. And, he
That's what
had
got Caesar killed too.
Yeah, and
One of the people he
there's
let up
another
easy was the
parallel.
one who killed him.
Yep, because they won it, and nobody was more for that than Stanton and all the big money guys. There's always money and power. And think about what Lincoln said. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And it was so true in his cabinet and everything else. They wanted to make money off the South, just like they do now. They make money on both sides of the war and everything else. Nothing has changed. We have not learned from history.
Bobby McKinley is also correct. The fact that the Union had control of the Navy also had a big factor into it.
Yep.
I didn't know about all the naval stuff that was going on. That was
know.
new to me. I was like, yo, they had submarines back then? Holy crap,
I know, it's crazy.
Dude,
It's
they
a
had
trip.
submarines. That
The
tripped me out.
Monitor and the I can't remember the rest
They
of
actually sunk a boat. They actually sunk a boat with the first submarine. Although that submarine didn't make it back, but
it. Right,
they
right.
did it. I'm like, whoa, they actually had a submarine. That was surprising. I
It's
thought submarines
tripping.
were like at least 50 years after that, but
And let's not forget this. Wait a minute. Here we go. Right there. He loves cats. Just saying. And Seward gave him the kittens. Remember? Because he had to give up Fido because he didn't want him to have the... So, Come on, people. Right? So, yes, the Hunley. Hey, how about that, the Hunley?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see. I'm trying to find this video, but they're so tiny. I mean, this little slide, it's so tiny. I know it's right here. There it is. So, are you good with Stanton? All right, the last thing I know about Stanton, and he'll be coming up later because part of the conspiracy, but, so there's more.
The
We're not
big part.
done. But I wanted to leave you with this, is after Richmond fell, Stanton goes running in because he got the word from the telegraph office first, and he goes into Lincoln, and they're talking about and then Appomattox and everything else. It was all very quick, and he says, Richmond fell, isn't that wonderful? He said, like, and Sherman hasn't left more than a crumb of bread in Atlanta, and, enough to feed a crow. And I mean, he was just like, oh, finally we're getting results here. And Lincoln kind of held his head down, and he said, I don't know, to Stanton, he says, I don't know if now is the time for hate. And it could, because he was so full of glee. Stanton, he was enjoying it too much, and you get that, but still. And he said, well, you can't have a war without hate. And he said, I can understand that. However, you cannot have a peace without trust. And now's the time where we have to start putting out trustworthy deeds. This was his talks with Stanton. You know what I'm saying? So again, Lincoln didn't jump up and down for joy. He was thrilled that the fact of peace, but he mourned the death, and he tried to stop it. As I said in the first episode of this, you can read documents where Lincoln offered. He started with one place, Baltimore, Maryland. I will buy all the slaves. We will give you so much money for the slaves to buy their freedom. They turned him down. He offered it to the South. They turned him down. He said it would be cheaper than a war and it would cause less death. They turned him down. They wanted to fight for their rights to keep their slaves and keep the life the way they were. And again, it was a war of the states. You're absolutely right,
Yeah,
Anna.
they
That's
weren't
what they
gonna.
called it.
There was no way they were going to take that offer because it was about a lot more than just that. It was about their personal sovereignty.
It's so true. So true. But that's he tried to do that. So if you have heard, can you still see, Donnie? You can see, right? If
Yeah,
you
I can
have
see.
heard that when Booth was found, there was only a few things in his pockets. There was the diary, of course, and 5 pictures in this little diary that had that little leather slit, and I'll have pictures for you probably next week or the week after on it. But like I was saying, the reason everybody had Booth's picture, like this one right here, was one of his calling cards. It was very much like, a business card, So they'd hand them out. Well, he had 5 women's pictures in this diary. So you can better bet they were like the first 5 that were pulled in. So a lot of these women have some interesting stories, I think, Donnie. How about you?
Yeah, actually, I don't know about the harlots that well. So that
You don't know about the
this is
harlots?
yours. This is your
I got the
wheelhouse.
harlots for you.
You got
Okay.
the harlots.
So here, this is
I
from
got the
Fanny.
love triangle though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is Fanny Brown. Now again, a lot of people had Booth's picture too, but when Booth shot Lincoln, it was absolutely of the norm. Oh, good. Thank you, Melissa. I'll look at it. Thank you so much for going through that trouble. I appreciate that. So it was the norm for, of course, the women to have them too and hand them out. 3 of these women were actresses, and the others were just, socialites who had their pictures. But when Booth shot Lincoln, people pulled all the pictures of Booth out of their little albums and took them down off the wall and tore them up and threw them out. And it was like confetti. They said in some places where it was just flying, it was all pictures of Booth. Isn't that a trip? They just tore them all up. So Fanny Brown was one of the 5, and she was a child of performers and began acting at 6. Now, she wasn't one of the famous ones that went around. Booth did a couple of plays with her, and of course they exchanged. It was known that he had many. He had a girl in every port. Trust me. And remember what I told you about the one, and also prostitutes that he was extremely jealous over because he went after that one actor about it, right? So she was one picture. She was interrogated. They didn't come up with anything because she was basically not even in town at the time, but they definitely interrogated an awful lot of people. So that was one picture. Another one was this fine lady here, Alice Gray. And in 1958, she toured with Barry Sullivan and performed at the Walnut Street Theater in Philadelphia. I put that up there because if you're reading books on Lincoln or Booth, you're going to see a lot about the Walnut Street Theater. It's as famous as the Ford's Theater. That one was not owned by the Ford brothers, though, but you will hear a lot about it because it was in a big city, Philadelphia. Okay, in the early 60s. She appeared as Juliet opposite John Wilkes Booth as Romeo in Baltimore in 1863. And again, you'll see some of these pictures, the way photography was back then. But this is when they started doing this almost like a bokeh background where it would be kind of washed out. The body would be washed out. You just have like this headshot because cameos were very popular. And also the tiny little frames that were like travel frames that, kind of the metal ones that folded up you could take with you. And that's what a lot of the Civil War men carried, as well as their wives and
Plus
sweethearts.
for lockets, it kind of makes sense. You know, just cut
Absolutely.
it out into locket.
Right, for the lockets and cameos, yeah. So there's that. That's Alice Gray. Now, I like Maggie Mitchell. I think she looks like she could kick up some dust here. She looked like she had a little guff on her, But this is Maggie Mitchell, 1932 to 1918, was Booth's fellow performer, friend, and possibly lover during the late 1850s and early 1860s. She achieved, there's a lot about her, but I wasn't sure about it, so I didn't add it. She achieved national fame in 1861 with her starring role in Fanchon the Cricket. Never heard of it. How about you? Never heard of it. But she apparently played that role all the way through. Again, most of these actresses, once their picture was found in the Booth's little diary there, never worked again or wound up in obscurity or, died destitute. Most
Basically had their lives ruined.
Right.
Yeah.
Root because they were in his wallet. So be careful who you give your picture to. Just saying. Okay? You never know where it's going to wind up. This one here is just like haunting, the way she's got that scarf over her head and stuff like that. But this is Helen Weston, 1844 to 1868. See, they all didn't live very long after the Lincoln assassination. You know what I mean? It's weird. Mm-hmm. Was described in her obituary in the Washington Star as a well-known star, popular once but never a great actress. Isn't that lovely? Why even say that? You know what I mean? Just in her obituary, for God's sake. She performed in England, Ireland, Scotland, and South America and the United States. She acted with John Wilkes Booth in Richmond in 1859 and 1860, and in Portland in 1861, where she played Juliet opposite his Romeo. Sounds like he was opposite his Romeo many a time here, but that one haunts me a little. She's got a pretty face. But all right, here we go.
Oh, this one.
This is Lucy Bessie Lambert Hale. The fifth photograph found on Booth's body was of Lucy Hale. That's how everybody called her. 1841 to 1915. She lived a little bit. Bessie was one of the belles of Washington society, the daughter of Senator John Parker Hale of New Hampshire. The senator was an outspoken abolitionist and an old acquaintance of Abraham Lincoln, and he was not all pleased about his daughter's romance with an actor who had Southern sensibilities. Now, Lucy Hale, the day of the assassination, her father is that day sitting with Lincoln in his office getting the ambassadorship to Spain, which he had been, Lincoln told me he would give. So she knows she's leaving with her father. So she has a meeting that morning with her secret fiancé, who happened to be John Wilkes Booth. She has breakfast with John Wilkes Booth. Later that afternoon, or early afternoon, her father is sitting in Lincoln's office getting his the last little bit of paperwork and everything else to go be ambassador to Spain. She's leaving later on the next day to go to Spain with her dad. So she's basically saying goodbye to Booth. And I think in his way, he was probably saying so long to her as well. Right? Now, she had a full dance card that day. Because later on that night, she had a dinner engagement with the man she was cheating on Booth with. You want to guess who that might have been? Robert Todd Lincoln. You can't make this shit up, people. How about that? Hail to the harlot. That's right, Melissa. But how about
so
that?
she was hooking up with John Wilkes Booth and Robert Todd
Robert
Lincoln
Todd
at the same
Lincoln.
time, and she actually saw them both on the day of the assassination. Pretty
I mean, how small of a
world.
town is Washington,
Pretty
D.C.
small
here?
world.
I mean,
It
oh my
sounds like
God.
they're like in their own little bubble. It seems like, you know.
It does. And you know, the thing about it with Lucy, she's so busy getting her hair done like this, she doesn't have a clue what Booth is doing. There was all the time she was interrogated, and she was just like everybody else, you know. But oh my God. And she was one of the few ones that lived because in 1915, so quite a ways after the
And that breakfast they had that day, that was actually their goodbye breakfast
Yep.
because they knew that she
Oh,
was
this
going to be
guy.
shipped off to Spain, so they were not expecting to see each other for a number of years. So I think when she found out about the assassination, she was like already over in Spain.
Yeah, and she's you know, I'm staying here.
Or
But
actually, no, because that was the same day, so she might have found out
no,
about it that
she
day.
well
Yeah.
she found out about it, and she was interrogated but let go because the senator and everything else. But
Yeah.
nobody knew that she was engaged to Booth. You know, people might have
Yeah.
seen her having a dinner with him, but she was just, you know, another chick. I mean, these guys, all these women here, excuse me, all got you know, raked over the coals, you know, by Stanton and his crew. I mean, it was
Hmm.
just, they went nuts. And Stanton's finally got power. Holy shit. Lincoln's dead and he's in charge of everything. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Oh, geez, it was something else. But I just wanted to show you this one again. This is Stanton this is McClellan. And he had to go
That's George
several times.
McClellan. That's the
Yep.
guy that was the first general that
Mm-hmm.
basically Lincoln fired, and then he wound up running against him.
Mm-hmm. And you could see the disdain in his damn face.
Yeah.
And they had to sit there and stare at each other. How long did they have to stay still, Donnie? I think it's, you know, like some
I
people
don't know
said,
how
like 2 minutes.
those cameras work back
For
then, so I
you
wouldn't
know,
know.
the still, and it depended on whether you had that wet
Yeah.
plane, that glass thing, or whatever it was. There was different cameras at the time. So, but just the disdain of them staring at each other. It's almost like that staring contest you would do as a kid. You know, I wonder which one broke first. But anyway,
Yeah.
there's that. So Donnie, incredible. You know, it's really late. I've got like a 8 minutes here I wanted to finish
Yeah.
up with because we're going to Gettysburg, and I wanted to show this to you because while I was looking, and then we're done because I'm getting hoarse again too. But my God, you know, again, we've got so much. So look forward to that. We don't know what we're doing next Sunday night. We've already said that we might start a little later because we're coming home that day. We're going to have something for you. We're not going to leave you hanging. My God, I hope Steve will be better by then, and all of us. I hope you all are doing well. Please send him thoughts and prayers. And if you guys need any of that good energy out there, please accept it from this chat. This is like the best chat ever. I hope you guys had a good time tonight. But I had to leave you with this because people keep asking me, why Gettysburg? Why was it important? You hear it's a turning point, a high water mark. It's all you know, it's really all those things. But, you know, there were really battles that got further north, if you don't know, in Carlisle. And there was one that came through Canada and you know, and attacked that way. It didn't, you know, get very far, but still, you can't say that this is the farthest north that the South got, because that's not true. It's more about what happened there, and the utmost respect that the soldiers. It's so odd because after you see people fighting the way they did, even to the point of in Pickett's charge, when Lee is just brokenhearted. Longstreet tried to delay it. He tried to talk Lee out of it. There's a lot of controversy there. I'm not going to argue with anybody on it. I mean, it's just really the way things moved. I really think Longstreet was trying to give Lee a little time to understand, this is not going to work. We got a mile of open field here. That they're going to have to get across it. Oh my gosh,
Oh,
Ted
Ted
Branson.
Branson, that's
Thank you so much,
real
darling.
generous of you.
Topped you up for such good content and community. Oh, sweetie. Thank you so, so much. Love you, Ted. Thank you. Mwah. Thank you. Excellent, excellent. Thank you. So I think Longstreet really tried to give Lee, breath. And you can watch Gettysburg, you can read the books, you can read the letters, whatever you want to do, come up with your own. This is just mine for now, understanding of it. It's the way it converged, and I truly believe that, very much like John Brown was saying, that almost like it was meant to be, like something had to happen to stop this
It was
madness.
like
Destiny. And I think it's probably true. But when Longstreet goes up to Pickett and said, can you take that field? Can you take that hill? And Pickett's just all ready. He's all perfumed up. Pickett was just, a grand old, West Pointer and just a Southern, gentleman soldier. And he was all excited about it. Very well portrayed in Gettysburg, by the way. And he goes off, and his men are waiting in that grove of trees to pass as all these cannons are lobbing, all of this artillery to give them cover, and just kept on going for like almost, I think it was like 45 minutes. Can you imagine? Just before they ever came out of the grove to cross that thing. When it was all over and who was left fell back. And Lee came up to a Pickett and said, can you reform your men, your division, and we're going to hit him again. And all the men were going, we can do it, we're going to go again. The intestinal fortitude of these soldiers was outstanding. I mean, there's just no other way to say it. Pickett looks up at Lee and he says, General, I have no division. He was 70% of his men. And the ones that were left were ready to do it again. This is why I think Meade let them go. The end of this 3 days was just, there were other battles, Antietam and Shiloh, all the way through Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, all of it. This was something. So why is Gettysburg important? While I was digging, I found a lot of people I really admire. I found a lot of people that I hung on every word they said. This man is absolutely one of the best orators, one of the best minds I've ever seen in this, as far as a professor and a Lincolnian and just a scholar on history alone. But he says it so well, and I wanted to share it with you. So it's just a few minutes. His name is Professor Alan Guelzo. And he was a professor at Gettysburg. Do you know him, Donnie? He was a professor at Gettysburg College. He was a professor at Princeton. He is the awards I could tell you about, that are the high accolades that he's gotten is unbelievable. When you hear him speak, there will be no doubt in your mind. Go ahead, sweetie. Go.
I'm gonna go smoke, and I'm gonna watch on my phone.
Gotcha, baby.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, don't miss this. He's amazing.
Yeah.
So I need you to hear his voice, and if you're interested in this subject, I highly recommend you go listen to his lectures for the 150th anniversary of Gettysburg, and it's called A Walk in the... I can hear myself. A walk in... I can't remember. As the curtain falls and some other stuff, but just look him up. And Allen Gelsberg, and it's spelled here for you, and listen to this man speak on the Civil War. And he just came out with a book on Lee. I'm looking really forward to getting that, because I'd love to bring Lee to life for you guys too, because I really admire Lee too. So here we go. Why is Gettysburg still important? And we will leave you with this tonight. So please enjoy this.
That's 51,000 out of the approximately 180 or 185,000 who came here as part of those two armies. That is a lot of damage and maiming. And when you bleed that out into the general population, into the households of the relatives, the families all across the country, the demographic impact of that alone is a gigantic bombshell. How can you not see in Gettysburg something which it better speak very deeply? Why were these armies coming here to Gettysburg? Why was the confrontation so violent, the bloodletting so intense? Was it simply an accident? I don't think so. It was because the irresistible force in the form of the Army of Northern Virginia had met the immovable rock of the determination of the Army of the Potomac. A realization on the part of both of these armies that Gettysburg and the battle that was shaping up here could very easily be the end game of the entire Civil War. Soldiers in the Northern Army, and I've read a number of accounts that speak to this, having seen the Union cause reel from defeat to defeat to defeat, Second Bull Run, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville, they had about come to the conclusion that given the poor quality and incompetence of their generals, their poor apologies for officers, as one soldier put it, if this next battle was not going to be a success, then they'd probably desert. They'd probably cash in. They'd go home. The Army of the Potomac would disintegrate. This was not because they were necessarily lacking any kind of faith in the Northern cause. They really did. They were, to the contrary, very clear in what they saw as the stakes in this. To them, the ultimate issue at stake was the survival of a democratic regime. And they made no bones about saying that. They understood very clearly that in 1863, the United States is really the only freestanding democracy in the world. That all across the stage of world history, the forces of reaction had been on the march ever since Napoleon Bonaparte. And they understood that if Gettysburg went down, if the battle fought there was a catastrophe, if the Northern cause went down, then that was going to take the cause of democracy with it. Because if the Americans couldn't make the democratic experiment work, then every crowned head in Europe would be happy to point to that and say, see, this is what you get when you create a democratic regime. You get instability. You get self-destruction. Here's this American republic obligingly blowing its brains out. And the monarchs loved that idea. They thought the South spoke to their ambitions. King Leopold I of Belgium, the sort of great uncle of Europe, spoke about how the Civil War gave an opportunity to see the southern states reestablish the aristocrat-monarchical principle in North America. So there was real hope that the Confederacy was going to represent that, and it did. I mean, here, in the very beginning, you see the Confederacy built around a rigid racial hierarchy of white and black, but it's also built upon a rigid economic hierarchy, an almost feudal renaissance. And Southerners not only understood that themselves, but they congratulated themselves on it. They believed that the forces of reaction which had been set in place by the Congress of Vienna, that they were marching in tune with that. In Britain, which has a parliamentary system, but was still leagues short of being anything we could honestly call a democracy, because even the parliamentary system itself was still dominated by aristocrats and aristocratic interests. The Prime Minister of Great Britain is Lord Palmerston. The Foreign Minister is Lord John Russell. I mean, we're talking about families of long aristocratic lineage and vast aristocratic influence. So even though you have a House of Commons with ordinary people in it, these are not ordinary people off the sidewalks by any stretch of the imagination. They might not be nobility, they might not even be gentry, but they're certainly not the common folk by any stretch of the imagination. So even in Britain, there is sympathy in the Tory aristocratic circles for the Confederacy. Everywhere that there is aristocracy in the world, there is sympathy for the Confederacy. And rejoicing that this civil war looks like it's finally going to put paid for good to these notions of democracy. Gettysburg thus becomes decisive, because Gettysburg is the battle not that provides a turning point to the war. I mean, the turning point of the war really was Appomattox. I mean, then you know that it's over for good. But it is decisive, at least in this respect, and that is, after Gettysburg, the Confederacy is never able to take the initiative in the war again. It restores sinking northern political morale. It rebuffs the forces that hoped that Lincoln could be compelled to retract the Emancipation Proclamation. And it gives Lincoln a platform on which to say, peace does not seem so far or so distant as it did before. And this actually strengthens Lincoln's hand in moving forward with an emancipation policy. So there were, on the level even of the common soldiers, this perception that everything was in play, everything was at stake, the entire future of democracy was hanging in the balance. And when Lincoln comes to Gettysburg 4 months later to dedicate the Soldiers' National Cemetery, that's exactly what he articulates in the Gettysburg Address. The Gettysburg Address is so familiar that it's almost become opaque. And we need to rinse some of the opacity out of it and realize exactly what it was Lincoln was trying to get at. When he starts off by saying, some 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. That, for him, is his base point. The Declaration of Independence and that Proclamation of Equality was, he said in many other occasions, that was his pole star. That was the most important, fundamental political belief that he had. He could sum up all of his politics in appealing to that proposition. What the Civil War was doing, and this is the really critical part of the address, what the Civil War is doing is providing a test. It's a test not just of the strength of the national government, it's not just a test of the skill of generals, it's a test of whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. Whether a democracy in which people are not born with saddles on their backs so that other people can be born with spurs to ride them. This is going to be a democracy, and this war is a test as to whether democracies really work. Or whether, as the monarchs have said, democracies are merely intellectual flibbertigibbets that are always going to fly off and self-destruct the moment any kind of stress is put on them. Lincoln says, this is a test. It's a test to see whether this nation, based on this proposition, really can make a go of it. Because if we can't, if we botch this, if we blow this through the foolishness of our Civil War, then we're blowing the whole idea of democracy for good. Nobody will believe this afterwards. And the forces of reaction will be able to do a victory lap all around the remains of this democracy. So he says, we're met here on this battlefield of the Civil War. We're going to dedicate a cemetery, but understand, he says, really, we're not dedicating a cemetery. That's already been done by the men who are buried here. They did it far above our poor power to add or detract. What's really critical, Lincoln says, is that we here take that as an opportunity for self-dedication to that principle for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. We have to dedicate ourselves. We have to experience a new birth of freedom, a kind of religious revival. We have to reappropriate that founding proposition of the American Republic. And if we can do that and carry things forward, then there will be a future for government of, by, and for the people. So what he does with the Gettysburg Address is to turn the attention from saying, well, there was a battle here, there's a war being fought, to putting it in a world historical context. There is more than just a war, more than just a battle. There is the whole notion of democracy. And we must imitate those who fought here and rededicate ourselves to it. And then we can go forward. He talks about the past, he talks about the present, he talks about the future. He does all of that in 272 words, which may be the most remarkable aspect of it all. Let's suppose that the Confederacy does win the Civil War. Let's suppose that Robert E. Lee is victorious at Gettysburg and the Northern Army disintegrates. The Lincoln government is either going to have to go to the negotiating table or Lincoln is going to have to resign, one or the other. But whichever way, there is going to be a division of the country. And the North American continent is now going to find itself as two republics. One, a slaveholding republic, which is in large measure ceased to be a republic in anything but name. And then a smaller rump republic, the North, the Union, which will increasingly become something similar to Sweden or Norway in terms of its overall importance. Meanwhile, the Southern Confederacy will do its very best to turn into an empire. It will move to either cooperate with or annex European ambitions in Central America and the West Indies, or actually appropriate territory in the West Indies, Cuba being first to be occupied by Confederate forces, and Confederate forces thereby turning that into yet another outpost of slavery. I mean, slavery was already there in Cuba thanks to the Spaniards, so that would not have been difficult for the Confederates to do it. The difference would have been that now you would have had the Confederates occupying Cuba with a view towards exporting that, and perhaps throughout the Caribbean basin. You also have to reckon with the fact that the Southern Republic, having started its life on the basis of secession probably would not have stopped there. There probably would have been a Northwest Confederacy, a Pacific Coast Confederacy. And you could arrive at the beginning of the 20th century with 5 or 6 quarreling little republics, each playing beggar my neighbor economically, making war on each other, and otherwise squandering the resources of the New World. For people today to look back at the legacy of the American Civil War and of Gettysburg, what you're seeing is a really vital moment that we can all take a measure of satisfaction in and a measure of rejoicing in, as well as the cold chill of contemplating what matters might have been like had, in fact, that democracy that Lincoln articulated not survived at Gettysburg and elsewhere.
You're muted.
That is why Gettysburg is important. That is why the Gettysburg Address has such meaning. 272 words. Took him 2 minutes and 11 seconds, basically. I mean, it was an amazing, thoughtful speech. He never called it the Gettysburg Address. That's what we named it over time. But that speech had the past, the present, and the future in it. So why is Gettysburg important? He just said it. What would have happened? You know? And it was certainly a turning point. And there was something else that happened there that I will show you next week that really solidifies the whole thing for me. This was for a country to become a whole one thing. And it was our duty to pick up where those that gave their last full measure of devotion left off, those that hollowed that ground in Gettysburg and in Shiloh and in Appomattox and Chickamauga and everywhere, the women that cried, the orphan children, the whole thing, the reconstruction, to rebuild. And it should not be easily turned asunder. This is my thoughts. And there's got to be a way to hold it together. And that new birth of freedom for all, everyone with their rights, the freedom of speech, our pursuit of happiness. Let us go to work, let us pay our bills, let us raise our kids, not the teachers, not the schools, our children. And I think these past couple of years have shown us how important family is and how precious and how fragile life can be. So if you can do one thing, think about those words in the Gettysburg Address and ask yourself, where are you? Are you in the past, the present, or are you thinking about the future? Future that we're leaving for our kids, you know? And I absolutely agree that we don't just need to leave better kids for the world. We need to leave a better world for the kids. And we also need to teach them how to respect each other, how to respect themselves, and what this freedom is all about, and how easily it can be taken away. Donnie, what did you think about that?
That was a really good talk. I was actually kind of glued to my phone, and I have to apologize for that weird noise. I was
It's okay.
screwing around with my mic. But yeah, I didn't think about the aspect of he was defending the whole entire notion of democracy. I wasn't really thinking about the attitudes of the foreign powers, and I wasn't really thinking about what the Confederates would have done had they won. So those are all very interesting things to think about. So he definitely got my wheels turning.
Yeah.
He definitely got me thinking about Gettysburg and from a very different perspective. For me, Gettysburg, up until that video, was basically just the survival of the Union, man. Like the Confederate Army, they were going for DC. If they lost, they were besieging DC, and it was a wrap, son. So they were fighting for the survival of the Lincoln government.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about how like Britain and all those old world powers were like looking at us.
They were already involved, as you well know,
Yeah.
and we'll bring it up in another episode, but you know, they were already, you know, chomping at the bit. I mean, this wasn't
I
just
definitely knew
America.
they all supported the Confederacy, but from what I
Yeah.
read, I thought that, well, what I read was that they supported the Confederacy because a lot of those countries wanted real bad the cotton and the tobacco. They were,
And it was also
yeah.
the aristocracy. The thoughts were the same. And again, what does that mean? We told it with Caesar. We told it with, you know, those that fought Caesar. I mean, even the Pharaoh and Cleopatra. I mean, again, it's the power. And once you get the power, you don't want to lose it. You want more power and
Yeah.
more.
Yeah,
And
I
what do
didn't
you
think-
do with that? And all of the, you know, the other countries that were basically with the South, it's that thought of that aristocracy. And, you know, you have to have that to rule over. This was an experiment. You know, you think about all the people that came here. They came here, again, we were here, but they came here for freedom. You know, freedom of religion, freedom, you know, to keep, you know, to sell it, to keep and sell the crops that they grew, and not have it taken away. And you know, they're fighting for the land too. And you know, none of it was good. You know, the disease and you know the killing and the massacre, the whole mess, and it went all the way through. I think there must be an easier way to say that basically we're not so different from each other. It doesn't matter, you know, how you color your hair or, you know, what t-shirt you wear, anything like that. Though everybody basically wants to live and breathe and be able to support themselves or have somebody else support them or whatever that might be, but their own pursuit of happiness and their rights to do so. And that means the slave, that means the rich, the poor, you know, you know, the absolutely, you know, it seems like some of the systems that we had in place, you know, I don't understand this homeless thing. I've always said that any country that has homeless vets on their street, there's something wrong if that vet did not choose to be there. And that was their right to choose so. If they wanted to go in the northern forest or whatever and be left alone, fine. But if they needed assistance and they're not being helped, what's going on with that? And that's
There are a
how
lot of
Lincoln.
indicators like that.
Yeah, and that's what Lincoln thought too. That's why he spent, I mean, as busy as this man was, he would go multiple times a week to the old soldiers' home over just crossed into Virginia, with sometimes with Mary, sometimes by himself, sometimes with his kids, because he wanted to talk to the soldiers. He wanted to give his appreciation and his love and care to them, and he would help. He would
Yeah.
change bandages.
And
He
he
would,
actually got sniped at when he was on the
yeah,
way to the old
right through his
soldiers'
hat.
home. Yeah.
Right through his hat. But
Yeah, he
again,
literally took a bullet.
right. We need to learn from history. So for those who were, angry at Lincoln in the beginning and didn't quite get it, was picking up pieces and everything else, we're trying to show you not just the man, but the times and the people of the times and the people around Lincoln and how he, there was a definite conspiracy against him. But I do believe it went off into Canada. I don't know that the Catholic Church was involved, but we will bring all that up. I'm just not one of those that believes that. But there was money. There was money, and it was all about money. So maybe we just need to put our lives and our souls and the future of our kids and our legacy. Maybe this could be the generation now that makes that difference, because we can't keep letting the rivers run with blood. And Gettysburg is important. Gettysburg Address is important. And I believe Dr. Alan Gulzo absolutely had something there when he said the Gettysburg Address has become very opaque. We need to wash some of that opaqueness off of it and really look back at those words, because they ring as true today as they did that day in November when that cemetery was dedicated. And when I stand there, that's where I was given this by the spirits. We'll tell that story maybe next Sunday again, and I'm going to go back again, and hopefully they'll recognize my soul and let me help some more of them cross. I'm hoping that that's what happens this time.
They'll probably
but you
see
never
my
know.
soul and be like, "Who the hell is that guy?
Yeah, but they're not
Who
going
is
to do
that
that.
weirdo?"
It's amazing. Gettysburg is something else, and it definitely rings. It echoes still. And I think all the battlefields do, but there's something about Gettysburg, and there's definitely something about the Gettysburg Address. So we're going to leave you tonight. I hope you got something from this. I know we were all over the place. Donnie, excellent job with Caesar. I learned so much. I
Thank
had no
you.
idea. So
I hope it
everything you
was
said was
interesting.
new. Oh, gosh, yeah. And
Yeah.
everything you said was so new to me. And I hope that reminds everybody, too, that in so many, depending how far back you go, everybody was enslaved. And in a lot of cases, everybody
And Julius
ruled
Caesar at the
over.
time he could possibly, yeah, he takes credit as, for the time, he is a man who single-handedly killed democracy. I mean, think about that. He single-handedly killed democracy. I mean,
And Lincoln was trying to fight
and he was
to get
trying
it
to
back.
save democracy.
Yeah, and say, and
Yeah.
and I think it's amazing. And John Brown as well. If you haven't seen the good Lord Bird, 2020 with Ethan Hawke on John Brown's life. Some of it's made up, but boy, it's good. He does a great job. And I've always loved John Brown. I didn't think he went about it the right way, but he knew. And again, there's a lot more supernatural and paranormal and
Oh, we haven't even
destiny.
started with the paranormal stuff yet.
Destiny involved in this, both with John Brown, Lincoln, so many different officers on the field, so many soldiers and things like that. So maybe this is a time for your destiny. Maybe there's something that you can do, however little it may be. You keep those candles lit, you keep your lights burning, because the light anchors in this world are needed so bad right now. You keep that light burning. Don't let anybody put it out. Don't let anybody tell you different. You stand up and you keep your moral compass well oiled, and you keep your eyes on that prize, because it's for all the marbles. It's for all the marbles, guys. Okay? I love you all, and I hope you got something out of this tonight. Donnie, again, as per usual, my man with the golden shovel, and I wish I could tell you we had like maybe one more to this, but I think the Lincoln Logs is going to go on for a little bit, and then we'll be done, and then we can put that to bed and move on to the next thing. So I thank you all for sticking with us. Thank you so much, Ted, for the super chats. Namaste. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. Thank you for the compliments. Thank you for the comments. Thank you to all the mods, wonderful mods out there. We didn't have any porn stars tonight. Or did
Oh,
we?
they're
They just
coming.
got rid of them so quick. Are they on their
Oh,
way?
they just heard you say that, Cisco.
They're on their
And
way?
here they
Okay.
come.
Russian
They're about to
porn bots.
braveheart this
Here we
this chat
come.
room.
Thank you guys for hanging in there. Please share it if you know somebody who would like to see it. Please look up Alan Gelzo and the Gettysburg Talks. He's an amazing man, writes amazing books, and when I recorded that, he's basically sitting there talking to a young 20-year-old kid that asked him one question. He said, "Can you explain Gettysburg, the significance of the Gettysburg Address to me?" And he says, "Sure." And off the top of his head, boom, 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 boom. It's absolutely amazing. And I'm so glad I found him. You can get so much knowledge from him on history and everything else. They're all free on YouTube. Go look him up. Get his books. Whatever suits your fancy, but I hope you found some good stuff tonight. We love you guys. Lots of bacon and love, healing light to everybody who needs it, and don't forget those herbs, because man, there's some power in it's power in nature, baby. Donnie, talk to you tomorrow, and thank you so much for all your hard work. Amazing as usual, my friend.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess I will be seeing you on Friday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here we go, baby.
Yeah, here we go. It's
Here
gonna
we
be a fun
go.
ride.
It's going to be great. The adrenaline's going to be like amazing. I
I'm
promise
looking
you.
forward to it. I think it's gonna be fun. I could really use a vacation actually. So
Yep.
it'll be nice
It's
to get
going to
out
be
of the house.
good. It's going to hit you right
Yeah.
in the feels,
I'm
man.
excited.
But it's also going to you're going to take in so much. It's so
I'm
much
ready to
more.
meet some ghost people, man. I want to
Yeah.
meet some of these
There's lots of
paranormal
those
people.
too.
Yeah.
There's lots of those too. The Gettysburg Bash is a wonderful collection of people, and you get a little bit of everything in there. So
Yeah.
there you go. All right, everybody. I love you, and thanks again for the support and sticking with us so late. Go to bed. Good night. Love you.
Bye.